This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
We're going to start with talking about the season 3 trailer because that dropped a few days ago and we should react to it as content creator people.
Yeah. Here's my reaction. Yeah. Okay. That's it. That's all you get.
My reaction was to watch it once straight through, to click through frame by frame, and then to go watch Lauren unraveling the patterns breakdown. Because although I don't normally enjoy getting super into the like unpacking and unraveling and spoiling everything in the show before it even happens, I also like needed someone who I knew had like slowed down and enhanced and like done all that. And Lauren's video was the right amount of detail and brevity to like help me feel like I had that like very saturated, like, all right, I have basked in it. And I've watched it a couple more times since, and I like it. I've
watched it a couple of times. My basic impression is I think and hope that they're again going to improve season 3 over season 2. It looks like they're sticking to book 4 pretty goddamn closely. 4, maybe up to 5 even, right? With Moraine, you know, if we're ending with Moraine and Lanfear going through a doorway, or, you know, obviously they're not going to do that because why would we stick to the books? But if this is the end of Moraine at the end of season 3, which, you know, makes kind of sense to me in terms of like a 3-season arc and like the way they're shortening things and the way you need to get through, you know, they combine 2 and 3. I can see combining 4 and 5, right? Taking elements of both of those books and squishing them together. Totally fine with me. You know, I see Aviendha, I see Aiel, I see the Waste, I see Lanfear, you know, I see Forsaken. It looks like maybe talking to some Grendel. You know, there's a lot going on there, and I'm sure the breakdown has a lot more than that. But I don't want necessarily what I find, and I was telling Aradia this, I don't necessarily want everything spoiled for me ahead of time. I want to be surprised by some of those things going into it. I don't feel the need to do that breakdown, just because I feel like it takes some of the joy of the show and sort of moves it ahead of the show instead of being in the show in the moment when I'm watching it. And it's like, yeah, it feels really good now, but it feels less good when I sit down and watch that first episode. And I'm like, oh yeah, I knew that was coming.
Yeah, I love trailers. One of the things I do to relax on YouTube is I just watch trailers, like for various shows and movies. Like I love trailers. I love the art of the trailer. And I have found that there is such a thing as too much. Wheel of Time and a couple of other shows, they've done things like, we're just going to release entire scenes from the first episode. And this isn't just Wheel of Time. I've seen other shows do this, and I hate that. Like, there is a degree of too much. And I say this as a trailer-loving person, but I adored this trailer. The thing I don't like is that they do seem to be giving away the Moraine plot in the first trailer. And that feels very like, I'm supposed to be able to enjoy the trailer, you know? Like, not watching a 10-hour live stream is an obvious choice, but like, I'm supposed to be able to enjoy the trailer. Like, and for them to just say Moraine is going to die taking out Lanfear in the very first trailer, to me feels very heavy-handed and annoying. But I also, for a long time, have maintained that if we get the Aelfin and Ealfin, which I desperately hope we do, we are getting 1 redstone doorway and not 2. Like, that has long been my thought. Is anything we have 2 of in the books, we are getting 1 of in the show.
Or none
if
of.
we get it at all.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, we're going to have 1 circus arc if there's a circus arc. If the circus shows up, we're going to have 1 circus arc.
Yeah, I doubt that. No one wants to see the circus. Not going to happen.
That's factually untrue. There's lots of people who want to see the circus. But my point is, it's just like with the Forsaken. We had 13, now we're down to 8. It looks like with the clan chiefs, clans, we might be going from 12 down to 8. Like, we're doing a reduction in number. Anything there's multiples of, we're pulling that number down. So, like, I could see if they're blending, if we're really leaning onto the Shadow Rising, but we're eliminating one of the redstone doorways, then that would be a thing to bring in from book 5. I just feel like you didn't need to say that in the trailer, if that's going to happen. Which now I don't think it's going to happen because they said it in the trailer, right? But I also feel like it does look a lot better than season 2. I feel like we're going to maintain this improvement of quality from season to season. I fucking love the Aviendha or the Aiel plot in general, and also the Two Rivers plot, and like the shots we get of Perrin, which like a little bit disjointed for me, feeling because I don't feel like we ever see Perrin in plate armor in the book. So seeing him fully tanked out in plate armor was a little bit like, whoa. I thought Perrin always went with Ranger, but he does go in as a tank. So like, I don't know, whatever. I'm very excited to see the Battle of the Two Rivers and like Perrin going full warrior wolf, like super jazzed. And we're going to see Egwene's accepted test, which obviously like those are some of my favorite parts of the books is seeing the accepted tests. So like, that's very exciting. There's this like wild drama happening. I will tell you a little bit about the meta. Wild drama happening about the one woman who almost looks like Elaine but isn't probably Elaine. The blue sky drama about Elaine versus Elaine is like been raging. So many people are so unsure if this is the same actress or not. And I adore that for us. I'm so happy for us that we are so deeply invested in being wrong about this. Half of us are wrong. Like half of us are just wrong. It's amazing. It's great. I also like the shot with Elaine and the coronet. Like I can't tell if that's a crown or a coronet. Because I'm like, we do have a coronet of the daughter heir, but that looks real elaborate for a coronet, but it doesn't quite look like a crown. I just have so many questions and I'm so excited to like get into it.
The other thing with the text over is they say, hey, you know, I've seen 1,000 times 1,000, you know, a million features.
1,000
basically.
times 1,000. It's such a Winter Dragon nod. Like, I love the Winter Dragon nod.
That's good. And then, like, we could see anything on screen and it could just be a vision, right? Like, anything in the trailer could be from a vision that does not happen and is just one of the possible futures of Moiraine out there. You could also get, like, references to things actually happening in the books, right? That, like, oh, they're not happening in this storyline, but in another storyline, like the books, we could get, like, scenes in those flashbacks. I don't know. I don't think they're going to do any of that. But, you know, it's entirely possible that...
We've got lots of opportunities for visions, so some of them will probably happen.
She could be wearing a crown in that. It could be the crown of Andor.
Right, totally. Or it could be in a vision.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is very exciting. We do get to see a bubble of evil, like the 3 people coming out of the mirror's bubble of evil. Like if you slow down that shot where he's exploding fire out of himself, there are 3 silvery human-shaped bodies in the room with him. It's like we're getting that bubble of evil. There's also a shot of a very handsome shirtless man who I'm assuming is Galad, because that wouldn't be Gawain, would it? That wouldn't be Gawain. That's got to be Galad. Has to be Galad. I don't want it to be Gawain. I want that to be Galad.
Keep your lust in check there, all right?
I just like, I don't want the beefcake to be Gawain. I just don't.
Well, yeah,
I don't.
Yeah. You're like, God damn it, I don't want to be attracted to Gawain.
I want Galad to be the hotter one.
So yeah, I'm excited for it to come out. I'm excited to watch it.
It's premiering March 13th.
I am so distracted by buying a house right now. Personal stuff. Yeah, no, this is something I've been working towards for years. That's difficult to say. And yeah, it's kind of cool that it happened. Yeah.
That's really exciting.
Right. So inspection was yesterday and everything seems good except for one small bit of moisture intrusion. So we're going to get that taken care of, and then I'm moving forward. But yeah, so sorry if I'm a little distracted about the trailer. I'm like, oh yeah, the trailer, right? Yeah.
I'm like, you want to do like a frame by frame breakdown? So it's like, I liked it anyway. Moving on.
Yeah. Well,
okay.
You know, it's a trailer like anything else is a promise, right? And they are promising good things, but I have been promised good things before, and I am not willing to give it my heart until it comes out.
This is the make or break season for me.
Yeah.
Truly. The fact that they're covering my favorite book means that this is as sharp as the stakes are going to get for me. Truly. Like, everything after this is just following through on what happens here. Like,
right. Yeah. I mean,
book 4 is where it's at.
There's book 4. You may be in book 5. Like, I could do another season that's basically Dumai's Wells, and then basically shorten everything after that to another season that's the last battle. I could see a 5-season arc, right? Like, because I really don't think everything from Dumai's Wells to the last battle, that third of the story is, I mean, essentially they've cut it already, right? There's just no point in having it based on the characters and the plot lines they've created because there's no intrigue. So, you know, I think that they could really do a pretty good 5-season arc and dedicate a whole season to the last battle if they've got 5 seasons in them. Do you think Rosamund Pike will be back after season 3, or do you think that Moraine is out for the season and not coming back?
That's a level of speculation that I don't care about. I am allergic as fuck to these. Oh, they're going to do this many seasons and the actors here and the budget's there. Like,
Gotcha.
I am fucking allergic to that. The show releases what it releases when it releases it, and I am happy or I am not. Like, that is like all I care about is the release date. And like, if I'm not invested in the story after this season, nothing that comes after could possibly capture me. Like, this is it for me. This season is it. If they nail this, then I will forgive so much, and if they fuck it up, I will never forgive. Right? Like, it's just this is the door. This is the split. This is the fork in the road. Like, we'll see. We will see come spring how this is going. But I'm very excited. And fun fact, WatCon this year has the costume designer as the special guest.
Nice.
Sharon Gilliam? I'm not quite sure, but the costume person who has been very interested in and forthright with the fandom is going to be the special guest at
That's
WatCon.
awesome.
So that's going to be fun because, again, just like the last season improvement, the costumes look to be delightfully scaling up again. For sure. I'm so excited to see how exactly much of a ripoff of Dune the Aiel are. Because there's only so many ways to do badass desert warriors who are very water efficient, and both those franchises have at this point spiraled around each other multiple times. So
Sure.
how identical are they going to be? We're going to find out.
If we go to the, Carrie in the Snow scene, right? That was badass, and that was way more badass than anything I've ever seen them do with the Fremen, in my opinion. And way more medieval as well, with the swords and the spears, right? So to me, that felt like a very good distinction. And if they hung their entire Aiel look, hat, and action scenes on that cold opening, which was clearly the best thing they did in that whole first season, in my opinion. Which, of course, I think the Aiel part is the best thing in the first season, right?
Of course.
Yeah. I think they do a lot with that.
It's exciting.
It's exciting. I'm going to watch the new season. I'm going to do my best to just give it a fair chance. And you're right. It is this moment where I'm like, okay, like, this is your chance, right? You've proven that you can do a lot right. And you just need to fix this one thing, which is your writing. Right? Like, that's all they need to fix. Just this one little tiny detail. And if you could do that, you could make a great fucking show. And the thing is, it's not even fix your writing. It's just copy Robert Jordan. It's right there on the page. You can do it.
So true. And for the podcast, I don't want to react to it until we're done watching it. And
oh, God,
we have fully processed our feelings. Mm-hmm. And then we can decide how we want to proceed with coverage of it. We will be spoilers, people. We will be waiting until it is spoiled. Then we will figure out our game plan. I don't want to figure out a game plan beyond that's the date at which we figure it out.
Oh, come on. Listen, you know that our brand is first out of the door on everything. We were the first people to cover Wheel of Time. The first
Can't even finish the second point.
We're talking about books that came out 20 years ago, for the most part. We're catching up now, but not that much. I think now we're like 10 years behind, right? Because like Memory of Light.
People are passing us.
Yeah. People are.
Oh, yeah, no, Memory of Light came out.
Yeah.
Fuck, that was like 10 years ago, wasn't it?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Rude.
Yeah.
That's an unacceptable number. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I would like to speak with the manager.
Uh-huh. Yeah, we were the first person to do the spoilers podcast about it, and the first person to really go deep. I think the chapter by chapter read through.
Yes, we are. This is the first dedicated hardcore Wheel of Time only podcast. That is genuinely this podcast's like claim to fame. Is like first to go this hard.
Yeah. I mean, and I always have to acknowledge there was the Dragon Mount had their podcast, and Twatcast existed as a thing.
They did not go as hard as this podcast goes.
No.
Nor did they have anywhere near the staying power. It's like there's a couple of little crackle snap pops on the horizon, and then one takes off and actually goes to the moon, you know? Like, this is what that is. Speaking of the moon, have you watched For All Mankind?
Why do I want to say yes, but I can't remember it?
It's on Apple TV.
No, then.
Okay. I got Apple because I wanted to watch Silo, but then I was like, I should try to get my money's worth, and I've heard good things about For All Mankind, and it's good. It's very good. It's very good. Like, it's got a lot of the same things that I liked about The Expanse, you know? Ensemble cast, actually interesting plots involving like space and stuff.
Okay.
But instead, it's an alternate American history, starting with the basic premise is the Russians beat us to the moon, or beat us to space, and then they just keep beating us. And so the space race just continues to be America playing catch up. And it's just an alternate timeline.
Okay.
But it has a lot of the same strengths as The Expanse in terms of like why I like it. So if you have Apple or get Apple at any point, For All Mankind is a very worthwhile show.
I've said this before, and I need to say it again. There are so many Apple TV shows that have been recommended to me that I haven't watched because I do not have Apple TV. I haven't subscribed to Apple TV. And so what I generally do is only try and subscribe to one service at a time, right? So I'm only subscribed to Netflix at this current point in time. However, once we get through some certain shows, Arcane, I may have to switch. Yeah, I've been watching Arcane. Really love Arcane. Never really loves Arcane. It's kind of an amazing show.
I hear you on the switching services because you don't want to pay for all of them.
No.
I'm on Apple specifically for Silo. So it's like as long as Silo's coming out, I will have Apple and I will try to make sure I watch other stuff. But once Silo's done, I'm going to like conserve my money, and because Silo's so good. It's so good. It's so creepy and weird and unsettling, and it's such a good adaptation.
And I also have a bunch of, I'm sharing in accounts on a bunch of the other services, but I'm not paying for them. But I do not have a shared Apple account with anybody. So that's the other reason why I've,
Yeah.
Like I have a shared Disney account. I have a shared, Amazon Prime account. I have a couple other shared accounts. Yeah.
My mom, I did have a shared Prime account. And then my mom, who was paying for it, decided in a fit of pique that she wasn't giving any more money to Bezos. So I'll have to re-up the shared Prime between our accounts when the time comes for the show. But I haven't had Netflix in forever. Like forever, because I was just like, I have too many services, and Netflix is the one that seems the like least ethical of all of the ones I have. So I haven't had them in a long time.
I canceled them for a while, and then we wanted to watch some shows, so we got back into it. There is construction going on next door, so apologize if there's some background noise. You may hear that. I'm sure Editing Radio will do her best to get rid of it, but sometimes it's just not feasible when you're talking.
Life happens. I have a client who I just thought she had figured out how to do separate Zoom recordings. Like, we talked through it, and she clicks the button while we were on screen share, but the latest few episodes she sent me are still all one audio, and it's just like, the crosstalk is killing me. It's literally killing me.
Again, hoping to get the girls to restart. This bitch is always late. The microphone's over there, but you know how it is. Things have been busy for me lately, guys. It's been... Jesus, the last 3 months have been absolutely a roller coaster ride in terms of big life events. Yeah, marriage, death, buying a house, moving.
Life is lifing hard.
Life is lifing really hard for me, guys. Really fucking hard. So, sorry if our release schedule's been a little intermittent.
It hasn't been.
No, we've been pretty good. Okay.
No, I've managed us. Like, we just went off for September. But
okay. Well.
That was a plan,
and
I released tangent compilations.
Nice.
During that time, I just, Thanks
to Aradia for covering my ass.
You'd let me know there was going to be a disaster of a scheduling hole, and then we had a season break, which gave us plenty of breathing.
Yeah. That is true.
It's been fine. Coming out of the holiday season into January, when you're dealing with coming back from your honeymoon and moving, that's what I'm not prepared for. I'm not prepared for that. We're going to have to get creative about that.
Right.
And by creative, I mean back episodes, probably.
I mean, we could always sit and record a couple of episodes, like pull an early day and record 2 or 3 episodes in one day.
We
and
could
just
do that.
Knock it out. Like, I mean, they probably wouldn't be the best episodes, but they're not the best chapters.
If we see a stretch of Gawain POVs coming up in the next couple of weeks, maybe we could We just do all the Gawain chapters out of order. Just collect them all.
Oh my God, that would be amazing.
One recording session.
Just
and this is a Gawain chapter. Anyway.
Yes, we are doing this out of order. Deal with it.
I mean, that's an interesting idea. We could try that. We should probably try getting into this book, though.
Anyway, I have ideas. All I'm saying. So, excuse me. I know I'm keeping us away from the book.
Slightly. Lillian is yelling at us to start the damn book. So.
Sorry to the live folks. Sometimes I get a little distracted. I'll get my brain back on track. Would you help me out with a read-in, Aradia?
All right. So today we are going to be covering chapters 2 and 3 because you'll see why. We're doing 2 chapters and chapter 1, which is technically chapter 2. Chapter 1 for today, which is chapter 2 in the book, is
the first chapter that we're doing today, which is chapter 2 in the book, is how I would phrase that.
Okay, yes, the first chapter for today.
Yes.
Chapter 2, the nature of pain. And our symbol is the flame of Tarvalin. Egwene stood up straight, backside aflame, with the now familiar agony of a solid beating beneath the hands of the mistress of novices. She felt like a rug that had just been pounded free of its dust. Despite that, she calmly straightened her white skirts, then turned to the room's mirror and calmly dabbed the tears from the corners of her eyes. Only one tear in each eye this time. She smiled to her reflection, and her twin selves nodded to one another in satisfaction. And that's all I need to read of the weird beating scene.
Okay, I'm chewing because I expected you to read more. Hold on.
I have thoughts I can go into while you work on that. Basically, just this is us getting into the really Sandersonian thing where we just keep saying the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. And this paragraph basically sums up most of her thoughts for the next several pages, that she is coming to a place where the pain doesn't really matter and she's not crying about it. And that's a really profound internal shift, and it's really important in her arc. Ta-da! Done. That's most of the chapter.
What's crazy to me is this is her moment on the mountain. This is her veins of gold, right? Like, this is the moment when she goes, oh, being strong isn't about being hard. And for her, it's a Tuesday. For Rand, it's this incredible moment that changes his life and changes the world and makes everything, butterflies fly and plants bloom and the sunshine shine. And for Egwene, it makes her go, oh yeah, that sucks.
And also, can we just talk about the weird layers of bullshit that have Rand having veins of gold on a mountaintop as a profound shift, and Egwene achieving enlightenment through being spanked?
I mean, there is something a little poetic about Robert Jordan's book being like a key moment coming from spanking.
No. No.
You cannot tell me that spanking has not been an integral part of this book from the very beginning.
I just don't think that the young woman character who's been a love interest for all of us for all this time being spanked by an older woman should be where power and confidence and maturity and stoicism comes from, particularly not when Jesus man over here gets to have multiple relationships with multiple women and a relationship with his father and multiple relationships with different mentors and have all of that stack into his literal highest point on earth, transcending into the goddamn dream. His profoundness is so profound. I just don't think that this weird in a dark room being physically assaulted by an older woman is comparable. I just think that's very weird.
Well, listen, at least it doesn't happen in both of these chapters that the main character is assaulted by older women until they have, oh, wait. At least it doesn't happen. It's weird that it would. Yeah, no, it happens twice. It happens twice.
And we spend so many paragraphs painstakingly patting ourselves on the back for working up to this. I just like. So, okay, I on Blue Sky the other day with our account, I asked, "What do you want from us?" Just screaming into the void. What do you want from me?
Right.
And
right.
one of
in
the
terms of
responses,
like the podcast,
exactly,
yeah,
exactly,
content.
It was the podcast screaming into the void specifically, and one of the responses I got was commentary on the narrative shift between authors and the literary style between authors. So here you go. I hope that you from Blue Sky are listening and feeling affirmed in this, because I would have ranted about this even under Robert Jordan's pen. I know Jordan would have written something like this and I would have been mad about it. But there's really a Sandersonian extraness to it.
And here's where I'll say the difference is. Jordan may have written something exactly like this, with the repetition, the beatings. Everything here is like perfect Jordan to a T, except every other paragraph would have been some sort of internal or some sort of parallel plot that was going on that both commented on the external plot, was extremely clever, and showed us something about an unreliable narrator all at the same time, while also giving us clues about other plots. Here, this is just externally what's happening. Yeah. There's no, and there's no internal monologue that, it's no, hey, Nynaeve having a conversation while also healing Logain.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
It's, there's none of the cleverness of Egwene, rocking on her chair and having it one internal monologue while also dealing with the sitters and everybody else around her. Like there's a level of layerness that is like, man, we went from an onion to an apple, right? Which is like the onion's got layers, and the more you cook, the sweeter more complex it gets. But we got the shiny apple, which is real sweet, and you take a nice bite, and you got that surface red, and it's just the same all the way down. And there's just nothing else. There's no layer to it. It's just nice, crispy, shiny red apple that looks really good and is really tasty the first time you eat it. But it just doesn't have the complexity of a tasty sauteed onion.
Brandon just recently discovered the magic of making onion jam. So this analogy is really hitting me in the taste buds right now. That is a very good analogy.
Which is not to say I don't love apples, right? I love this book.
Mm-hmm.
I love these books. These are 3 very good books that I am so happy exist and that he did. But especially here in the beginning, which is just, let's be honest, the beginning of all of Robert Jordan's books have been Recap City. And I have giant blue chunks of these chapters highlighted that for me is just like, this is a bunch of recap. This is summarizing where the characters are and what they're doing, which is totally typical, right? And so it's very hard for me to point out like any individual thing where I'm like, oh, Jordan wouldn't have done this, because pretty much everything in here Jordan would have done.
But the style is very different.
Mm-hmm. The style is very different. And the way it's just not woven together with another narrative in a way that lets them play off of each other, right? Like, one thing by itself isn't that interesting. 2 things, you have all these interactions. 3 plot lines, you have, hundreds of possible interactions between these storylines and interesting things that are going on. And like, we're getting that one. And I think he does build up to 2, but, maybe not. He's very much building up to that complexity at this point in the series.
You're making me think of a cool GIF I saw recently of a visualization of pi being irrational.
And
it's like a line or going around, and it just visually shows like this very chaotic, like it's a spiral, yes, but like it's all over the place. And yeah, you're making me think of that. Like Robert Jordan, he wasn't even 3. He was pi. He was working with pi plot, and it was chaotic and messy and didn't make sense sometimes. And yeah, Sanderson's walking in here with like the Pythagorean theorem, being like everything is extremely we are in integers.
Yeah. But
there are no decimal points anywhere in any of this. We are A, B, and C. That is it. That's all that is happening.
Okay, yeah. All right. So we'll talk about trigonometry versus.
No. Fine. White Aja, have at.
I'm just saying, okay. I'm just don't want the math people coming for me out there, right? Like.
Okay, fine. Defend the podcast's honor. Go ahead.
No, moving on. Take the analogy with a grain of salt, and don't come for me, please.
Okay, fine. He's coming in here with a right triangle. There you go.
Cool.
There you go. Look, I'm not the math person here.
Call it a golden triangle and move on. Golden triangles have whole numbers.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, cool. We got there. Seth managed to defend the podcast's honor. We got pi versus a golden triangle. That's my argument, and I'm sticking with it.
Oh, I'm dying here. God,
Apologies to everyone who's smart.
These are the moments when, again, I like these scenes. Externally, they're fun, right? I love Sylviana looking down the leather strap and going like, is it broken? What the hell? Like,
It is funny.
It's a very funny moment, like, being like when this person gets up and you're like, I've been beating the shit out of you, and you go up and go, anyway, cool, thanks. There's a certain amount of I'm not sure what's going on here. Am I broken? Is she broken? I don't get it. And it is her growth. She's embracing the ideal way. She doesn't quite have that realization yet. She can't quite laugh yet, but that's the whole arc of this chapter.
Right. And like when she does get to that, I do find it's hard to believe the way I have a hard time believing Rand being like, I just make the pain go to someone else. It's fine.
Sure.
Like, I have a hard time empathizing with it, but also I have like multiple massive tattoos. So like, I do get the whole, this hurts less than the pain of not doing it. Like, I really want this tattoo.
Sure.
So I am going to sit here and let this person literally torture me and be chill about it and like have conversations sometimes even, because I want this more than I want to not feel pain. I do feel like being tattooed is different than being beaten with a leather strap, but you know, I can attempt to connect those dots. I mean, like, literally, my Wheel of Time tattoo was one of the most painful experiences I've ever gone through.
Yeah.
I made some bad calls on that day. So, you know, I literally did that for Wheel of Time,
right,
specifically.
Right. There's something about bearing pain in the Wheel of Time, right? There's something like, for me, it's about sports, right? Because I'd always read about these injuries in the battle where you get cut and you don't even realize it. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. So I get cut myself my finger and it's a light cut and it hurts like fuck. But then you go and you play sports and like maybe you're playing soccer and you get kicked with a cleat and it, you know, slices your leg open and you don't realize it until you pull your sock down. Right. So that kind of stuff does, like, adrenaline in a contest, like, our bodies really do kind of shut down the pain response. So there's a lot of stuff like that where I can make those connections and believe there is some way to sort of overcome pain with mind. But, you know, that's also just part of Jordan's mythos around ignoring the heat and the cold, ignoring the pain, being in this zen void and flame moment where you can embrace the source, embrace the power, and be outside of your body in this way, separate from your body. You know, this outside looking in thing that Rand always talks about when he's in the void, where it's things are happening to someone else's body, even though the power, you can sense it more acutely.
I mean, that just sounds like autistic contradictions, really. Sylviana gets some fun just character moments here, just literally in the background looking. Like, she actually does develop as a character just in what we see her doing non-verbally. And then literally verbally. She like tries to reason with Egwene in a way that she hasn't before.
She gets
like,
trapped into it. Yeah.
This isn't working. Maybe I need to like try something else. And then Egwene like immediately owns the conversation. Sylviana's like, fuck, that didn't work either.
And the growth is like, hey, this person's getting beaten so often, she needs to get her food or else the healing's not going to work. And then basically looking after her basic health when nobody else is. It's a low bar.
Oh, yeah, there's that. Well, I mean, because it's her job, right? It's her job to discipline the novices, not to beat them to death, right? If the discipline they need requires extra calories, and that's just part of the job description. It's not even a bar, it's just part of the job. Like, Egwene frames it as a kindness, but I'm like, it's just in the job description. That's all it is.
And I definitely want to separate, like, acute pain and pain of beating and stuff like that to chronic pain. Like, chronic pain is a whole different beast that is, in a lot of ways, much, much worse than acute pain, almost always. Oh,
yeah. Like, Egwene is in a very strange place of being given an acute pain at a chronic pace.
Right.
Like, she's people can approach her from both sides.
She gets healing multiple times a day, and that is a complete relief from that pain for a period of time.
But she also talks about the now familiar agony whenever she sits down. So,
True.
like, I'm confused. The healing is enough to keep her walking, but like she talks about being in pain all the time, and later she talks about being surprised she's not in pain constantly,
Right,
like after the tower gets retaken. So maybe she gets healed like right before. I'm confused, honestly.
I mean, she's beaten 3 times a day, right? And so the healing, I don't know if the healing, I think it is right before she gets beaten, right?
It
because
must
she's supposed
be.
to feel the pain as long as possible, and then they heal her so that she can be beaten.
But also being, I don't know. I just feel like this is deeply impractical on a lot of levels. Like, her body is going to make her pay for it, like in her 50s or whatever, you know? Like, there's a great line in, not in the Alana books, but in the Calladry books later on in the same universe, where Alana says something about it doesn't matter how many times you get magically healed, your body keeps track and it will pay you back. Like in your 40s or 50s or whenever she's talking, she's like this epic magic heroine, and she's like, yeah, no, all the times that I had magic heal my bones, I still feel it. So one assumes that this is true across every magical universe,
Which I feel like is the case. Like, if you break a bone, we do heal from it. It can be set. Modern medicine can put it together. But, you know, I can tell you from experience, like, broken bones hurt for years and years afterwards. They ache, right? Not all the time, but sometimes. You know, when the weather's changing or whatever. I don't know if that's a myth or not.
No, as far as I know,
pressure,
it's very real.
It's very real, yeah. So, you know, my jaw aches when the storm's rolling in, right? And I can see if you have multiple bones, like, you can wake up with just, like, aching pain throughout your entire body. And, you know, many, many, many multiple days. If you have multiple bones.
Yeah.
If you have multiple broken bones that have been healed.
As a monobone person myself. Yeah.
A monobone.
I just have one bone. One bone.
Okay, we're not going there.
Yeah. All that to say, I think all of this being severely beaten and then healed is probably not doing Egwene's physical health any favors. Even though it's magic and it's perfect, I don't buy that it's perfect. There are small errors creeping in on her physical health. My personal headcanon.
One could argue that the healing is what helps people in the Age of Legends supposedly live to be much older. They live to be like 150, 200, just average person. And I'm kind of assuming that's because of the prevalence of just normal healing.
It doesn't mean they don't have achy bones.
Yeah, well, I'm just imagining if, you know, some of aging has to do with, you know, you can heal. That is something is dying, something is degrading. Healing could keep it going longer, right?
Yeah. I just don't think you're supposed to get healed from being beaten 3 times a day for a week straight. I just don't think that your body's meant for that sort of yo-yoing.
No, it can't be good for her. No.
Exactly, Lillian. Mitochondrial fatigue. There you go. There's a sciencey way of saying it.
But it's amazing what you can recover from in your 20s. You'll pay for it later, but with the things you can recover from in your late teens, early 20s is pretty amazing. Yeah.
Exactly. In her 50s, she would be paying for this, like needing weaves and teas. You know?
Spoilers, not going to be a problem.
That's the real reason why she went out. It wasn't Gawain. It was the fear of arthritis. Egwene leaves the Mistress of Novice's study and goes and talks with her handlers before she heads off to Elida's dinner thing. She sort of talks with them in the hallway for a little bit.
Well, she's delaying because she's waiting for Alviarin to show up, because she's kind of keeping tabs on Alviarin and whether or not she's being beaten. Right,
and she has just enough time to hang out and then go to Elida. She doesn't have time to do anything else. So she's like, yeah, I'm going to linger here for a minute, see if Alviarin shows up. And she talks to the Reds and she asks them. And remember, one of them is not a Red. One of them is a Black. Aja, sister. So she's talking to the two of them as if they're Reds.
Katarine, right.
Yeah. She's talking to the two of them, thinking they're both Reds, saying, are you pleased with this? This is your legacy because of Elida coming from the Red. And the other one, the one who's actually a Red, as well as Sylviana, who's eavesdropping, this hits them both. They've both very much been in the tunnel vision fog of following where the Black Aja leadership has been taking them. And now Egwene is saying, this is your legacy. And suddenly it's like the rant in the Barbie movie, right? Like it breaks the spell. And they're like, wait a second.
Right.
We've been thinking about this all wrong, which really is Egwene's arc in this chapter too. I mean, at the end, she's like, in the course of going to the dinner, she's like, I've been thinking about this wrong. Everyone's been thinking about this conflict wrong. That's part of the damn problem. Is everyone who's working on the right side is too lost in the weeds and not seeing the bigger picture, which is that Aleida has lost control of being a reasonable person and the Reds are going along with it. And that's a problem. Like, the entire institution needs to reset.
And not just the Reds, but everybody in the White Tower is going along with it, right? They're accepting it.
Yeah.
The lesson she learned from the woman who accepted
Shamaran,
being an accepted, Shamaran, right? Like, what did she learn from that? I'm not going to do the same thing, which is I'm not going to accept what she's told me to do. And that's the problem with everybody, is they've all accepted this craziness coming from Aleida and just being like, oh yeah, this is the new normal. This is leadership. I guess we're just going to let that happen and not change leadership, which the cowards never do, by the way.
Right. And like, the people who should be her biggest critics who are her biggest enablers are the ones who should be her biggest critics.
Right.
The people who are next to her in the decision-making room, the people who are next to her in the process of deciding to go left or right in a given moment, those are the people that like also need to be held to account for not putting the brakes on this, because one person cannot drive a whole institution into the ditch by themselves.
And meanwhile, Katarina's like, oh, fuck, she caught us. Pisses her off. She's like, hey, don't. Shh. No, we're not going to say that.
Mm-hmm.
So
very much so.
That's why she gets punished again. But the other person who hears it, who I think it matters a lot, is Sylviana.
Exactly.
Right? Like, that's because the door's still open, so Sylviana listens to that whole thing. And that's the person who she's really ends up talking to through this whole argument.
Right. Egwene thinks, why am I wasting my breath on this? And then the door clicks behind her. It's like, because you never know who might be eavesdropping. That's why you're quote unquote wasting your breath. It's not a waste. You never know who's listening.
Also, her arguments, great recap fodder. Here's all the things Aleida's done. Are we really going to stand for that?
It's
like, yeah,
very
okay.
light-handed on that. Very subtle, very easy to just be like, oh no, that was just a good conversation. Wait a second.
That was a recap. Damn
that
it.
Was a bunch of exposition. Yeah.
And then there's this sort of change in strategy where she's like, I don't really need to win the war against Aleida. Aleida is going to undermine herself. I really just need to hold the White Tower together.
Yeah. And she talks about how she's winning and the victory is tasting less and less sweet.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, winning is not actually what I want. I want the tower whole again. Winning against Aleida means tearing the tower down farther. Like, what I actually need to do is rebuild the tower as Aleida is tearing herself down. Like, that's actually the challenge. It's harder, but that's how you know it's right.
And that's why she needed to be on the inside, right? Because she built up the rebel tower, the rebel side, to be, this strong, hierarchy, all the politics that we did, which was a lot of politics, right? Out in the rebel tower, was to get, these women to support what was to them otherwise an innocent young girl, right? And to do so in a way that made the tower strong and supportive of a strong leader and united towards a common goal. And now she has to do it from inside. And, the Sean Chan ended up helping her quite a bit on that.
As she foreshadows very clearly in this chapter. She's like, how would Aleida feel if the Sean Chan slapped an idom onto her idiot neck? And I'm like, ooh, don't piss the dreamer off. She'll foretell your future.
Which is always bad. You never want to know your future.
No.
We get a timestamp. She's been 9 days back in the tower since the kidnapping. So that's, the whole last book, right?
Yeah.
Was from her getting kidnapped to now. So 9 days was the span.
A whole 9 days.
A whole 9 days.
God.
We get the dark one, the pattern, right? Pretty much every chapter has something where the pattern's breaking, halls are rearranging, dead people walking. In this case, we're getting, a painting that changes.
Very dramatically.
Very Halloween, right? Like skulls and mask of blood and dead bodies hanging from the eaves. And it's like, okay, who got a hold of a vintage painting and painted it up for Halloween is what it looks like.
Right? Yeah, totally. The dark one is just like having a craft day.
All Hallows Eve before the Armageddon. Tarmageddon.
Yeah. And then we get to one of the most life-affecting paragraphs in the whole series for me.
Yeah. The spot.
Yep.
Yep.
Egwene turned and stalked away from the misplaced mural. She couldn't focus on those problems right now. You scrubbed a floor clean by first picking a single spot and getting to work. She'd picked her spot. I have been clinging to this fucking concept like a lifeline ever since I first read it. Like, I can't fix everything. I gotta do what I'm doing.
This is why, like, I love Sanderson, because he has these just incredible nuggets of wisdom and great quotes sprinkled throughout his books. Like, they are straightforward, but they're good.
They're good.
They're good. You know, and you know, there's not a lot of subtlety. He's telling you what he's telling you, but there's some real cleverness in there.
Subtlety is not the only way to make good, impactful points. Subtlety is one of the tools in the toolkit, and Sanderson lacks it, but he makes up for that lack with other talents that are right next to it in that same toolkit.
Mm-hmm.
He just does not have a subtle bone in his body, that's all.
Yeah. I recite this line every time I'm doing dishes, because I get so overwhelmed with the pile of dishes, and I'm like, nope, just clean this one plate. This plate just needs to get clean. That's all you're cleaning right now is one plate. And then you're doing the next plate, and then you're doing the next plate, and then the bowls, and then the pots, and then the silverware, and then all of a sudden there's like 3 things left, and I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to do any of those things, but it's the last 3 things, so I might as well get them done.
Yeah, no, it's a great way to cut through the overwhelm. It really is. And I mean, Egwene is like, on the one hand, I want to criticize her because I'm like, you should be doing something else, you know, like fighting back more aggressively. But then it's like, what she ultimately manages to pull off is the effect of the long game. We can't all operate at the same speed. Like, change does not, like, think of a record player, right? Every spot on that record is not moving at the same speed, but they're all working in lockstep, right? Like, depending on where you are on the disc, you're moving through space faster.
They're all moving at the same angular rotation.
Look. They're covering different distances.
Yes.
They're covering different distances in the same amount of time.
In a ratio based on the radius away from the center.
Yes, and that's my point, is that, like, a movement is not made up of people all moving at exactly the same speed, doing exactly the same thing in exactly the same place. Some people are going to be, like, way closer to the center. Some people are going to be way farther at the edge. But in an ideal world where the record is actually playing like a record plays, you're all working together in the same direction. And Egwene is, like, in the heart of the tower fighting for control over the literal center of the spindle, right? Like, that's literally how they describe the White Tower, is the wheel of time rotates around. Like, the world is rotating around. This is the spindle.
And that's why there are multiple Forsaken dedicated to breaking it, right? Both broken and corrupted separately.
Right. So that's why it's like, no, Egwene doing the work necessary to work her way into the esteem of all these women in this power structure so that she can ultimately smoothly take over control when Elida gets kidnapped. Like, it takes scrubbing the floors for 9 days. It just does. She just has to stay committed to her course. And so sometimes when I feel really stuck in bullshit, stupid stuff that doesn't feel exciting now, but is part of the larger picture, it's like, this is the floor scrubbing part. This is just the floor scrubbing part of the story arc. We will get to taking over the world later. That comes later. We got to scrub the floor now.
And again, this is, there's a lot of Sanderson talking to us, I feel like, sometimes.
Sure.
He's saying, listen, I know you want to get to the Dark One and the pattern and the last battle, but right now I've got to clean up some of these plot lines over here because there's just a lot of loose plot lines that I'm going to, I got to have Egwene take over the tower. This is what I'm focusing on right now. We will get to that other stuff, but right now I got to clean this plot up before we can go any further. So there's always a little bit of meta in here with Sanderson. I think he's a little more meta than some of the other authors, than Jordan is, right? Like,
he's a different kind of meta.
Different kind of meta. Yeah.
He's on a different level of reality with his meta.
He likes to talk about his writing in his writing.
Yeah, which Jordan was sort of allergic to.
Yes, because Jordan wasn't a professional writer. Jordan was a military guy. He became a writer later, and that's something he was. But, like, he had other careers first, and I feel like he wrote about the things he experienced in war. Whereas Sanderson writes about writing.
Mm-hmm. Because that's what he does.
In a way that I love, that's very clever, and, he knows all the tricks, and he's a very academic. He writes outlines, and in a way, it's really, really technically good writing. It just lacks some of the organicness that I think Jordan has. And some of the authenticness to it as well, right? Like, there's just the way, the emotion of someone being in war and seeing bodies torn apart. And, like, it's hard not to be like, okay, yeah, that's... Ooh, okay, yeah, he's writing that from a place of experience. And, like, I just know Sanderson's not, right? Like, I just know he's not, like, when he's writing about magic people flying around with giant swords cutting each other up, like, I just know there's just no reality there whatsoever. There's no experience there whatsoever. So it just hits differently to me for some reason.
I mean, it's the difference between some heartbroken drug addict playing a beautiful song they wrote on a guitar, like on a corner, versus someone like working with a team in a studio to make the next pop hit.
Right.
They just hit different.
They
are both technically songs that are 3.5 minutes long, but like they're just different.
And they can both be technically really excellent songs and stuff like that. But yeah.
But one is coming from a place of lived experience and heartbreak and pain and like raw emotion, and the other one is crafted to appeal to a mass audience. You know, they're different structure, different folks. I like both personally, but they're very different moods.
And that's kind of why I call Sanderson the Marvel of fantasy, right? He's writing this massive interconnected universe, and he understands the mechanics of how to write a good story. And so you get something that is going to hit a certain formula and going to hit certain points every time, is going to be a certain quality, but it might not be special.
Or surprising.
Yeah.
But it is fun.
Yeah, it is fun. And not even surprising, like reading it through the first time, it can be surprising. Like you can have surprises and twists in it. But once I've read through it the first time, I rarely find a lot more in it the second time. Which is crazy to me because like I know people are screaming at me because like the Cosmere has so much depth, I'm constantly discovering new things. And I'm like, yes, because he keeps revealing new stuff in new books that changes the context. So you go back, right? But if you were to have all of the Cosmere out and read through it, I think by the time you got to the end, there would be no mysteries left for you to go back and discover. By the way, have I mentioned that Wind and Truth came out this week? And I've been listening to Book 5 of Wind of Truth. I'm about halfway through. So
I take it's good, but standard?
I'm waiting for the Sanderlanche, right? Because like we all know there's this end of his book, which is just going to be crazy. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of reveals. Again, some of them, right, like I saw coming because the community has seen some of the things coming. I don't want to spoil anything, right? But like, so far I've had 2 reveals, both of which were heavily speculated about in the thing. And I went, oh, okay, so they were right about that. Right, like that's sort of what's my reaction has been so far on the big reveals is, okay, we were right about that. Oh, that not necessarily like the only theory, right? There's multiple theories, and I'm like, oh, that was the right one. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So far, nothing that's made me go, oh my god, I didn't see that coming at all. But again, halfway through the book, right? That's before all the big reveals. That's still definitely in the setup period. So.
So returning to this book, I don't know why it's relevant that Alviarin is late to her appointed beating. It doesn't seem to lead anywhere, but we get a mention of her.
Yeah. I mean, so it could either be just that like the tower's being rearranged and she got lost, right? Totally.
That was
possible.
my guess. Yeah. Totally was just like your basic bubble of evil switcheroo.
We did just see the Forsaken fornication, right, in the previous couple of chapters.
So she could have been receiving orders in the aftermath of that?
Yeah, that Messana came back and gave her a bunch of orders. That's the only other thing I have on that is that she's dealing with the aftermath of the Forsaken.
Sure, that could be. I prefer the hallways just switched on her because it's what happens to Egwene in a page. So the next thing I had was that the Reds in their own Aja quarters are all very like angry and cranky and suspicious. And I just thought that was interesting that the people who are ostensibly on top and in control are so angry and don't even like each other, and how maybe that means that there's something sort of rotten in their entire like collective hallucination together.
Oh yeah, being on top is always the most vulnerable place to be. You're a target for everybody else, right? Like
But even to each other, they're even looking at each other with suspicion in their own quarters. It's like, this is the place you should be secure. And yet.
Speaking of which, Intel just laid off a whole bunch of people for some reason after being on top of the industry for years and years and years, and not related in any way, shape, or form, I'm sure. Anyway, back to the books.
Yeah, so I always think it's interesting when the people who are on top of a power structure are fighting with each other more than anyone else. It makes me question everything about their motivations and their methods. Just saying.
Oftentimes what I find it is that people see who's on top, think it's going to be, oh, hey, I can join the people on top, and that's an easy ride because they're already on top. We don't have to struggle. We don't have to fight anymore to get on top. And then you end up with this company that is full of people who are taking the easy ride and enjoying the fruits of the labor from what happened before. And it becomes a situation where, yeah, you have a lot of waste in your successful companies, and you don't see it because you're successful, right? And so it builds and builds and builds and builds until you reach a critical point, and then everything falls apart.
It's almost like success built on exploitation and power hoarding isn't the way to go.
That combined with, what is it? Things fail slowly and then they fail quickly. Mm-hmm. Which is, you see a slow decline for a long time on big complex systems, and then all of a sudden there's a breaking point. Right, I was watching like the Mount St. Helens explosion, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's a complex system where the eruption happens slowly and then it happens very quickly. Things like financial crashes.
It was a small earthquake, and then it was the biggest eruption in history. Not in history, it was the biggest sideways eruption. Yeah, but it was a very small earthquake that actually started the eruption. It was just one little rock just happened to finally reach its tipping point and tumble down. And then we had
the 2008 financial crisis, right? Complex system that was failing slowly, and then all of a sudden it was failing very quickly, right? And I think climate change is like not to get political, but we're in trouble with climate change because we are still in the...
Climate change isn't political. Anyone who says climate change is political is being overly political, and they can just skedaddle. Like, no, the tipping point realities of climate change are something I studied that in college from a policy and management standpoint, not from a climate science standpoint, but just like how do disasters work and how much more likely are disasters going to be? And it's... Yeah, the whole tipping point thing where, it fails slowly until it doesn't. We're in the last few seconds of fucking around before finding out really hits home. Like the finding out is kind of beginning if you're paying attention.
Well, and my big issue with climate change is a third order equation, right? Because climate is dependent on the amount of heat in the atmosphere. The amount of heat in the atmosphere is dependent on the amount of carbon in the atmosphere, which is dependent, which then traps the sunrise. So to reduce climate change, we have to reduce carbon and then wait for there's all these things, if we stopped emitting carbon today, we're screwed. If we eliminate all the carbon in the atmosphere today, we're screwed. It's because we haven't acted earlier, right? So we've really hit this point where mathematically it's just oh my God, there's even if we do things and screwed, I don't want to go into the oh my God, there's nothing we can do. We can always improve the outcome.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
But at this point, there is no way that we're not going to see significant effects of climate change on human society going forward.
Right. And that was becoming true for a long time. But even international scale science has caught up to we may be in the act of walking over that last line. Right now, right as we're writing this paper, this is what is happening. That's happening. And so Elida is climate change, but for the White Tower. That's all to say that.
Yeah. And we definitely, God, compared Elida to Trump often enough that it's kind of fitting that he's coming back at the same time we're talking about her again and her.
So it's our fault?
It's our fault. It's our fault. We did it.
God. Speaking of Elida, though, the next thing we have is Egwene really meditating on how she is going to approach this confrontation that needs to not be a confrontation.
Sure.
And she decides that the best way to get through, she decides that this is not the time to try to actually go for a head-to-head with Elaida. She was like, I want to just keep this on a simmer. So she decides to just say nothing, to just go with absolute silence and non-reactivity instead of going for the jugular like she wants to. And it's so hard for her that she vibrates and probably gets the beginnings of an ulcer before she drops the soup. But like, that is what she decides, is that she needs to not engage with Elaida, which, you know, changes in not that many more chapters, like by the end of the book, right?
Sure. But I get where she's still trying to build up a foundation with the people around her. She doesn't, it's too early to force a confrontation, or else she'll be kind of like lose the freedom that she's gotten used to having to sort of not necessarily undermine Elaida anymore, but help the White Tower. And if she, you know, she's like, what can I do from a cell, basically?
Which, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I can't find any fault in her logic on this one. And yeah, she gets to the rooms and finally gets to know who Maidani is. She's been ignorant about who Maidani was this whole time, but now she's able to make contact with Maidani, which is, I believe,
puts a name to a face, basically, right?
Yeah, but this is the beginning of her really developing connections with the actual would-be powers, aside from Elaida. This leads to her meeting the Black Aja Hunters.
Because the whole reason that Maidani is still there is because she had to swear an oath to the Black Aja Hunters who discovered the rebels, who made them swear the fourth oath, which is ironic considering that's what Elaida's talking about. Deeply ironic. That Maidani's already sworn a fourth oath of obedience, just not to Elaida. And so she can't leave because she's been sworn not to. And so this whole thing where Egwene's like, why isn't she? God, Elaida's just fucking with her. Why is she still here if it's been obvious that, like, and it's because she's sworn an oath to obey and they've told her she cannot leave. And she has to continue to spy, right? If you go back and remember, there's a whole scene in the basement where they're like, okay, you're going to try and renew your relationship with Elaida. And she's like, I don't want to do that. And they're like, too fucking bad.
Well, right. And she's like, I already tried that on behalf of the rebels. It didn't work. They're like, you just have to try again. And then Elaida knows about her being a rebel. She's like, all right, fine. I'll let the seduction go forward so that way I can play mind games with her and learn more. And like, Maidani's caught like 3 different ways. It's very awful. So yeah, Egwene is basically there to serve as a personal serving maid to Elaida and Maidani as they have a dinner quote-unquote date, which is just so full of barely veiled threats and like weird smugness that it's really uncomfortable. And there's a lot of Egwene looking at Elaida and really, again, Sanderson getting to be like, here's my first look at Elaida, here's my first chance to write Elaida, and being like, yes, she seems changed. She doesn't seem like the Elaida that we met in book 1. Like, what happened to her? What happened? Like,
what happened? Yeah.
Is this just a shift of because power? Is it just that power corrupts, or is there something else?
Egwene had met this woman before, and Elaida had struck her as stern, but not tyrannical. Power changed people. Or, you know, Fane.
Or was it Fane?
Yeah, it appeared that in Elaida's case, holding the Emerald Seed had making her taken her sternness and solemnity and replaced them with a healthy sense of entitlement and cruelty. And it's like, or Fane.
Yeah, because I really want to give credit to Elaida being fundamentally, like, not the worst before being corrupted to become the worst. Like, Fane is very, very corrosive. He's really bad.
I think of her more as a Romaine, right?
Yeah.
Before Fane.
Yeah, exactly. Not great, but not bad.
Problematic, someone you have to manage, but like has the right ideals and thinks she's doing the right thing and, you know, is not in it for personal gain or greed.
Right. And when push comes to shove, she will step in on your side and like be on the team, and she will accept the decision and actually work for the group ends once the vote's been taken. Like, not tyrannical, not building a palace that rivals the White Tower as a part. Like, none of that fits the woman we initially met, but it very much fits what Fane does to people, or what Mordeth does to people. Like, that is the person who came to Aridhall, right? Like, that's the Aridhall destroying personality really coming through. Fane's sort of just a weird creep, but like this slick worm tongue character that can corrupt anyone, that's the Aridhall guy.
And, it's Matt's corruption, right? We've seen this corruption over. It wasn't Elida involved in cleansing Matt of the corruption?
I believe so, because she's one of the stronger sisters in the tower, so she would have been there.
Yeah, she was there.
And
so,
she also spent time talking to Fane.
Mm-hmm.
Like, specifically, she was giving him private audiences and stuff. Like, they spent time together. So, yeah, it's hard to imagine that this... I mean, Fane even talks about how Elida will never trust anyone again.
Right, yeah, he talks about how he touched her, right? So he's one of her victims, very clearly, just like, Tom... The guy ran fights
Toram
in the fog.
Rioton.
Toram, yes, thank you. Toram Rioton, right? Definitely one of his victims, right?
Totally.
There's a couple other people that we know are absolutely touched by Fane. And it's the chaos. It's the Joker plot, right? It's this, like, people are just going to be corrupt and bad, and the stain of Arid Hall escaped. And this is something Matt did, kind of. Right? I mean, Fane really did it and really pulled it out. But I think if Matt hadn't taken the dagger, he wouldn't have the power he has.
Yes, this is entirely ultimately because of Matt's impulsive decision to grab the dagger. Fane would not have been who he was and been able to corrupt Elida if the dagger had not escaped the perimeter. So that's sort of a bummer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Fane took the soul of...
Mordeth?
Guy. Mordeth, yeah. Took the soul of Mordeth.
Whatever.
But Matt really took the corruption of Mashadar and
Mashadar.
pulled it out of Shadar Logoth, right, with a dagger.
It physically taking an item from the city outside the perimeter is what really broke containment, quite literally. Yeah.
And so then we get sort of the...
So the fourth oath discussion happens. So there's discussion about like how Maidani is being made to look through historical records to see like all the inventive ways that her and her co-conspirators could be tortured to death or whatever.
Yes,
it's like really, really weird,
heavy-handed,
and messed up.
ham-handed, yeah.
And then we shift to an oath of obedience.
Clearly done in front of Egwene just because, like, hey, this is also something I could be doing to you too, right?
Right. She's like, I can torture both of you at the same time with the same concept. It's fine. And then she moves on to the I want to take away everyone's free will and just have a fourth oath of obedience. And Egwene is like, I either need to literally bite your throat out with my teeth, or I'm going to have to drop the soup and create a distraction so that way we have something else to do other than listen to you say things that require me to physically destroy you with my bare hands. And she says, Elida's like, how dare you? Egwene's first response is, I'm sorry that happened. Perfect Aes Sedai answer, because she's like, I really didn't want any of this situation, so I'm sorry that this happened. This is not what I wanted. It's so great. It's so Aes Sedai.
Oh God. And Elida, she's just awful.
Oh my God. That village, my rug cost more than your village.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. Get your classist ass the fuck out of here. Disgusting.
Or teasing Maidani about taking away her shawl. Like, and then when Maidani freaks out, she's like, oh, just a joke. I'm just joking. That's such a bully tactic. It's such a bullying, like, bullshit.
I'm just joking, child.
Child, yeah.
Right? She even uses the word child. Like, I've already done it in my mind, but we're going to pretend that I haven't. Yeah. Oh. And
then some great foreshadowing. How would Elida feel about these exaggerated rumors if the Seanchan slapped a cold Adom around her idiot neck?
She's going to say, I promise if you send me home, I will send 10 women in my place. That is how this bitch is going to react.
So, yeah, I mean, that's clearly exactly what happens to her. She gets an Adom slapped around her neck and she gets hauled off. That's how this whole thing resolves. So, like, right there in the beginning, Sanderson's like, so this is what I'm going to do with that plot line. By the way, just in case you were wondering.
Yeah. He's like, yeah, Elida is going to get the thing that you feel bad about wanting her to get. That's where we're going with Elida. Ooh. And then she uses the opportunity of cleaning up soup to recruit Maidani to her cause.
Yeah. Another Elida line. How many sisters will have to do penance before they acknowledge my authority? The beatings will continue until morale improves. Right?
Truly.
Yeah.
Truly. Yeah. Maidani tries to be like, you can't order me around. And Egwene's like, I'm your Amerlin. Deal with it. And Maidani's like, you know what? That sounds good. Sounds good. All right. Fine. It's great. I'll take your compliments. I will consider talking to you later. Like, she's an easy sell. Elida has been tough.
I think there's an important paragraph here, too, about Egwene, about the 3 oaths, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because Egwene does a switch that we talked about, where in the beginning she's like, we should not be doing the 3-0s. They're terrible. And then later on, she's like, no, the 3-0s make the Aes Sedai. And there's a bit of like retcon here where it's like, once she herself hadn't understood the importance of oaths, but she had learned, as every Aes Sedai must, their importance. The 3-0s were what made the Aes Sedai. They were what kept the Aes Sedai doing what was best for the world. But more than that, they were a shelter from accusations. And to me, it's just, again, weak sauce, right?
Yeah, that is extremely weak sauce.
I'm not against having 3-0s, but the ones that exist are dumb.
And that justification does not hold water for me.
No. Mm-mm.
Like, I get having a couple of, safeguards on the magic nukes. But a shelter from accusation, the lying oath is the one that gets y'all into the most trouble. It's the not making weapons and not killing people indiscriminately that I think are really what's helping you out. I think the lying one is doing more harm than good. So
yeah, she recruits Maidani, which is like that whole like, I'm your Amelin, and her being like, wait, what? Still? Okay. Like, I thought you were done with that. But kind of not as bad as the traitor, where Egwene had to be like, no,
Bayanin.
I am still Bayanin, yeah. But Maidani does have to be like slapped and be like, yo, hey, I'm your Amelin, listen, like, obey me.
Yeah, which is great foreshadowing for the next chapter with Aviendha and the Wise One situation, where Egwene's just like, no, I am the Amerlin. It doesn't matter that I'm cleaning up soup. I'm still the Amerlin. It's very the inverse of what Aviendha's going through in the next chapter.
Where she needs to be doing that and saying, I am a wise one. Exactly.
We're seeing here in Egwene that Aviendha has, like she has the shoes that could take her home the whole time,
Right. There's no place like the waste. There's no place like the waste.
Exactly.
Elaida says she's going to make her come back. She doesn't ever make her come back and serve
she
again,
does.
she? Oh, yeah, okay, she does.
Yeah, it's that meeting with all the different sitters that Egwene had been working with, and then she, beats her. It's when Egwene says, I suspect you would be a dark friend, but the dark one wouldn't have you.
That's when she tells her off, right?
Yeah.
I forget that she's serving at that one again.
It's literally a repeat of this scene because, maybe you've learned your lesson after all the things that happen in this book. And then that happens because Egwene did not learn her lesson because she is the Amerlin.
Yeah, she could have just done it here.
No, she couldn't. She needed the audience. The fact that other dinner has all those different, it's like 15 sitters, 12 sitters. Like, it's a huge amount of important women. There's only Maidani here. This is absolutely not the time.
Gotcha.
Also, she needs to build all those relationships with all those women. Like, when she walks into the room for that second dinner, she's like, shit, it's all the women I've been working with. Like, this is the make or break. I can't back down in front of them. Whereas Maidani, she doesn't even know who Maidani is when she walks into the room. So...
And it is this moment where she's not going to lose any reputation by giving into Elaida.
She won't lose any G.
Yeah.
She literally is not going to lose any G by just getting through this as best she can. And this is literally just a feeling out mission for her. This is not meant to be the assault. And then she goes and has her dinner and thinks about how everything went and reorganizes her thoughts about the mission. And it's just like, damn, Elaida really is her own worst enemy.
Right. And just Egwene's duty as Amerlin wasn't to speed that fall, but to do whatever she could do to hold the tower and its occupants together. That's the key change in this,
Important shift, important reorganization of her motivations and also a good refocusing of our goals as the reader. What are we cheering for here? Is it just Aes Sedai politics? What are we doing? No, this is the goal. Sanderson is refocusing us.
Yes. Yeah. Her quest is no longer to bring down Elaida, which it has been, right? This whole time is declare war on Elaida, form an army to bring down Elaida, take down Elaida. But that's what the Black Ajah wants. They want the two halves of the tower fighting. And here Egwene comes to the realization that's counterproductive. I can't be doing, she doesn't think of it as what the Black Ajah wants, but she can't be hurting the tower. She has to be healing it.
Right. And this is why the Yellows try to recruit her.
Yeah, exactly. And this is why the Greys should have recruited her, right?
Yep. And then she goes back to Sylviana, who is reading a book about the rise of various Amerlins for no apparent reason. What's also fun is that this book is mentioned in the show.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's that exchange between Shiriam and Varen, where Varen gets Shiriam out of the room. She specifically asks to borrow her copy of Meditations on the Kindling Flame. Very specifically. I'm just like, okay, I see you bringing in a book 12 reference. That's fun. I like it.
Egwene, well, the woman said up. The Amerlin has spoken. Yes, I have, Egwene says.
And then she bends over to get spanked. It's just like, it's all about attitude. It is not about your position. It is about your attitude.
And this is where she comes to the realization that, like, emotional pain trumps her physical pain.
Yeah.
And that, like, the physical pain is just not that important because she's in so much emotional pain because the tower, which is this thing that she's made her heart. We can talk about exactly why she's made the White Tower her heart, but she has. Being the White Tower is the thing she has dedicated her whole life to, right? Over becoming a wise one, right? She left the wise ones. She left a ton of opportunities to just be an Aes Sedai. This is what she cares about, to be the Amerlin seat. You know, she is the Amerlin seat. That's how she takes down Msana later.
Yep. Her faith in herself as the Amerlin is utterly integral to her entire soul existence. Her entire metaphysical being is the Amerlin seat.
If Rand is the land, Egwene is the tower.
Yeah, very much so. She embodies that whole ass island all the way up to the tippy top of the tower. Yeah.
She's the spoke around which he turns.
Very much so. Very much so. And together they make beautiful music for the rest of us to experience.
And so, yeah, she starts laughing during the beating, and Sylviana's like, okay, you're nuts. What's going on? And she's like, I'm not broken. It's just absurd. This is absurd. You're being absurd. I'm being absurd. This whole thing is absurd, which I agree with. This whole thing's absurd.
And Sylviana comes so close to her own radicalization. And then she just shies away from it. It's going to take her a whole nother book and a whole bunch more of Egwene being beaten before she actually leaps over the chasm. But you see her tiptoeing up to the edge of the chasm and looking over and then being like, no, I'm going to retreat to my safe thoughts and not do the new thing because that would be scary. But she almost gets there. She's like, I see what you're saying. You know I can't refuse to beat you. Spoilers, you can, actually. You can refuse to beat her. You might end up beaten and thrown into prison yourself, but it is literally a choice to beat her. And then Egwene in the next paragraph is like, you know that thing with Shamaran and the acceptance? Like, it's all about acceptance. Like, you are accepting Elaida as Amerlin and I am not. Like, the obvious subtext is stop accepting Elaida as Amerlin and we can work together to actually heal this fucking tower.
Yeah.
Get it out from under the madwoman on top.
And the line, again, that was started this off with saying this is her veins of gold moment. And she has the line, it's not hardness at all. It's not strength that makes me laugh. It's understanding. And this is her whole, it's not being hard.
That is the veins of gold. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is like, I thought that I had to be harder to stand up and laugh at the pain. And it's not about being harder.
And again, like that is good writing from Sanderson because that is true. That is what the thesis has been and will continue to be. I mean, it's when Cadsuane asks Sora Leah, tell me the difference between being strong and being hard, right? Rand al'Thor confuses the two. This is Egwene becoming very unconfused about that. She is realizing that, it's not strength. It's not hardness. It is understanding. And that gives you strength. But it's understanding, it's knowledge, it's being able to bend where you need to bend and hold firm where you need to hold firm. It's not just about being stubbornly resistant to everything.
And okay, so here's going a little meta, talking about like the Andrew Tate characters, these like podcast dudes with the red pill. Like that's all about being harder, not about being stronger.
Absolutely. They equate strength with being like jacked up and emotionally stunted and abusive.
And hard. Yeah. And hard and inflexible.
Yes, very much so. And they see having understanding as being weakness rather than strength.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
Exactly.
The toxic manosphere being dissected by Brandon Sanderson of all people. Love that from you.
It's the difference between toxic masculinity as in our modern parlance, right? This toxic masculinity is this hardness, and I think that there is a little crisis around like what do we see as masculine these days
and feminine. We've got a lot of crises around how we understand ourselves as social
understand
beings.
and view gender, right? Like it's hard. We're making changes, and I think people are because it's hard. People get frustrated and angry about it, right? Because it's not straightforward. It's not easy. The conversations need to be had.
Well, especially when we're, not clear as a society on the difference between being strong and hard. We are literally confusing them like Randall Thor, we need some Soralia Cadswain energy to come in and set us right. Emphasis on Soralia, because Soralia is slightly less problematic than Cadswain.
And I certainly think that's a lesson I had to learn, right? Like, because I think I had a lot more. When I was young, I got angry a lot because I mistook the two.
Sure. I mean, I think most people probably have to pass through that. I don't think many of us come out of like the narcissistic parts of childhood like any other way. Yeah. I feel like our society is just like, no, like it's our whole society. I don't think it's necessarily a gender thing. We all have to work through it. Men, unfortunately, just get given a lot less language and tools for working through it, right? When you're a young woman, you get given a bunch of tools and information about why that's not how we're going to continue. Whereas men get told, yes, this is actually a thing we will praise you for. But I feel like we all have to pass through it at some point. Like,
I think we all should pass through it at some point.
We all have to deal with it.
Yeah.
Whether or not we do is. But yeah, I mean, anger, I don't know, maybe it's just because I'm a very angry person. But like, yeah, anger is definitely, learning to not just bludgeon things with anger has been a process.
Right.
Are we ready to start the next chapter?
Yeah, sure. Which goes into someone accepting punishment again. So we're on a theme.
Yeah, so from the righteousness of Egwene's punishment, we now shift to the nonsensicalness of Aviendha's punishments. So should I read us in, or you want to just get into it?
Read us in a little bit, because I do think he does a good job of getting into Aviendha's head and sort of being from her POV, because I like Aviendha's POV, and we don't get a lot of that from Jordan. Just the ridiculousness of wetlanders and some of the hypocriticalness around dresses and stuff like that. I think it's I don't know how much of it you want to read, but I think it's a well-written POV from Sanderson. Again, incredibly fucking frustrating that she can't figure out that she just needs to say these wise ones are being ridiculous. I have to stop listening to them because they're being ridiculous.
Well, and again, as I said earlier in the recording, if this was the only chapter where she had this circling around and the next time we visit in with her, she's like, no, this is dumb, then we wouldn't complain about it. The fact that this is setting us up for like 1,000 chapters of this going around and around again, that's why we're complaining about it now. But yeah, I agree. Getting into Aviendha's head is a rare treat in the series. And again, it's very much Sanderson saying, I've been reading these characters for as long as you all, and I'm really excited to be here. And let me just like go through a Rolodex of all the characters I'm excited to write and like show you what I can do with them. And it is fun. I do think this is very authentic to the Aviendha we have come to know, although it does feel a little bit like a step back in her cognition and her processing. A little bit.
Yeah, this is she's more Aiel than Wetlander. Like, it does seem like she's come a long way and acclimated a lot to the Wetlander way of life. And here she's going back to like, what are these tree things? And it's like, oh god, yeah, okay, Aviendha, like, like you were being ridiculous. But in her own mind, she likes to pretend that she is not nearly as Wetlander centric as she is.
Yeah. And it still feels authentic to who she was. It still feels like if we had been in her head in like Fires of Heaven, this is how she would have sounded. So.
Right. But this is a good point, that this does feel like a Fires of Heaven Aviendha, not a Knife of Dreams Aviendha.
But I think you're really right about her self-image being very Matt-like in terms of her behavior not lining up with her thinking, not lining up with her words. And that's what the wise ones are calling her out on and punishing her for, is the fact that she is behaving one way and thinking of herself in another way. Like,
oh, I don't even think it's that. I think they just want her to say, like, I think the final test of being a wise one is saying, oh, I don't have to listen to you. I am your equal. Otherwise, you'll just be beaten down by the other wise ones all the time.
Well, yeah, that is literally the lesson. But like, That's what I'm saying. She's not seeing herself as a wise one. She's still in her head thinking like, I just exited the waste and I still don't know what these tree things are. Like it's all of a piece.
Gotcha. Oh, and she totally does know what the trees things are, and it's just
Exactly.
oh yeah, trees. What?
Exactly. They're like slapping her, being like, "Girl, you know the word for trees. You know the difference between oaks and pines. You know what deciduous means. Stop fooling around."
This is your degree in botany, goddammit. Like
Exactly. Have some confidence in what you know. You went to college for this. Exactly.
And there is a lot of imposter syndrome going on with Aviendha here, right? This like
Big
idea
time.
of like, everyone's asking her opinion, and then she gives it, and she's like, "Well, why are they asking me? I don't fucking know anything, right? I'm dumb. Why would they ask me?" And it's like, no, you're really close to Rand. You have good opinions. You call it every single time. It's the same thing with when she was testing the Terangrial, and she was getting it right every single time, right? Boom, one after the other. And she's like, and even on the last one, she's like, I mean, I still don't know, but I think this one, if you give it 2 turns and a twist and a bop and give it a spin, it will create this intricate map. And she's like, just a hunch? You're going off a hunch on that one? Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And Aviendha's like, I don't know. It might. I'm just saying it might.
I will say I am feeling very personally attacked by this section. Other things in my life have been rapidly escalating with this exact conversation. And personally attacked by Aviendha's arc here. This was written to personally attack me at this moment in the year of our Lord, December 2024. Rude. All right, I'm going to read this in. Chapter 3, The Ways of Honor. And our symbol is the Aiel spears and buckler. Aviendha crouched with her spear sisters and some true blood scouts atop the low, grassy hill, looking down at the refugees. They were a sorry lot, these Domani wetlanders, with dirtied faces that had not seen a sweat tent in months, their emaciated children too hungry to cry. One sad mule pulled a single cart along the 100 struggling people, what they hadn't piled in the vehicle they carried, or there wasn't much of either. They plodded northeast along a pathway that couldn't quite be called a road. Perhaps there was a village in that direction. Perhaps they were just fleeing the uncertainty of the coastal lands. The hilly landscape was open save for the occasional stand of trees. The refugees hadn't seen Aviendha and her companions, despite the fact that they were less than 100 paces away. She'd never understood how wetlanders could be so blind. Didn't they watch, noting any oddities on the horizon? Couldn't they see that traveling so near to a hilltop practically invited scouts to spy on them? They should have secured the hill with their own scouts before coming anywhere near. Didn't they care? Aviendha shivered. How could you not care about eyes watching you? Eyes that might belong to a man or maiden holding a spear. Were they so eager to wake from the dream? Aviendha did not fear death, but there was a very big difference between embracing death and wishing for it. I'll stop there. She goes on for a long time in that vein about cities and wetlanders and culture, and then she thinks about Elaine and politics, but I'm not going to read like the first half of the chapter, so I'll cut it there.
One line that we sort of get to after she's done with all of that is she was ashamed she'd resisted the change for so long, talking about staying a maiden for as long as she did instead of becoming an apprentice. And that's just sort of very appropriate now because now she's resisting the change from apprentice to wise one.
Have you
and
learned
it's like
nothing?
You're doing the same thing.
Yeah. I was also thinking as I was reading that about how her people used to be those people. Like the Aiel refugees who straggled into the waste were not much more coherent. I mean, the people that left the breaking, the people that ended up in the waste were a few generations in. But the Aiel started out as just as much confused city people being turned out of their fancy utopian life to wander the apocalypse.
That's true. Yeah, they were a servant class basically.
Yeah,
of the Aes Sedai. Yeah,
they weren't agriculturalists. They weren't
warriors.
Yeah, at all. They were servants to the magic elite. They were those refugees once upon a time. So, just a little fun remembering back to book 4.
It's like Jeeves had kids and they turned out to be an army of warrior butlers.
I mean, the Butlerian jihad does happen at 40,000 years in the future or whatever. Just saying.
Yeah, they're talking about not returning to this is really and the beginning of Aviendha's arc was the Algai the Siswai wonder if the Aiel would ever return to the Threefold Land. And that's the beginning of her sort of theme about, if we're not returning to the Threefold Land, what is the purpose of the Aiel? Which goes to her changing the columns, which leads to her future revision, which causes her to change so that's very much like this whole her plot line about like, if the Aiel aren't going back to the Threefold Land, what are we doing as a people? And that's sort of her plot to solve for these books.
Well, and also, we get foreshadowing of the debate that will come about from her solution, right? Because Ruark brings to the Wise Ones this discussion about, we don't want to just be the police force for the wetlands. That's kind of not our jam. That's kind of how they get written into the Dragon's Peace. Not quite with the same level of disregard that they're currently working under, but like, they revise the concept of being the Continental Police. That is the solution to the problem raised here. It's a little, the foreshadowing feels on the nose and unsatisfying when you know how it ends, because it's like they don't want to be cops, and they're going to get sweet talked into deciding to become cops.
Yes, I mean that is true. That he's complaining about it. I thought it was something specific. Hold on, let me just find this.
It's not cops. It's maybe more like the Peace Corps, but still, it's closer to this thing they say they don't want here than.
To me, yes, but it feels like he's complaining about how like we don't really have the authority to be doing that. Not necessarily like I don't want to be doing that, and so much like I don't have the authority to be doing this. And I mean that might be a subtle difference, but to me, it's like okay.
Well, that's a pretty big difference, though. Yeah, because like the right of conquest and taking the fifth and all of that. Like they work in the Dragon's Peace, you're going to get, paid rather than taking the fifth. But still, like, yeah, they're currently doing unpaid, unrewarded conquering. And it's like, but then her solution is to literally figure out a contractual way to like make that a permanent arrangement that actually works.
Right.
Which is, I guess it works. I find it slightly unsatisfying, but it's interesting that he's literally packaging the entire arc, the entire foreshadow, all into this chapter. This whole chapter tells us everything we need to know about where this is going to go.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing you don't want to do is start creating like, like an Aiel Israel situation, right?
Oof.
Where you carve out like where you now they're not going back to the waste, so now we got to carve out a section of
chunk
a
of
place,
Kyrian.
like a chunk of Kyrian that's like maybe Holy Land for the Kyrian, or maybe it'll be like around the Dragon Mount because that everyone can fight over the mountain.
Oh god.
And they should settle on the shores of Tarvalon, right on the Dragon Mount side.
Oh, that'd be good. They could just displace the Tarvalon citizenry. The city that's been there for thousands of years since the dawn of known civilization.
Kind of what the Black Tower's doing. But yeah, no, anyway, I'm just saying, like,
I mean, really.
There's enough parallels already. We don't need to go into that one.
The Black Tower's not displacing people. They picked some random forest.
That's true. Well, and that's the thing about Wheel of Time is there's so much abandoned land that the Aiel could just settle into, right? That it's not a big deal, but...
Right. There's that scene with Rand and the Ogier where he's talking about humanity on retreat as he looks at where all of the old steading were. Like, literally, there's more land with each passing generation, which is very different from the world we have found ourselves in for the past several centuries.
And one of the implications is that this reverses that trend, right? With the Dark One locked away, with all these technological achievements coming forward, with this new age that Rand has created, yeah, he's breaking the world. What he's doing is he's breaking the medieval world with a renaissance.
Very much so. The rebirth factor is going to be very, very real, given how well the last battle ultimately goes.
Combined with just like all the advancement so we're seeing gunpowder, we're seeing steam engines, we're seeing
trains,
production trains, right? The production of all of our modern electricity, right? Like all of those things are coming along in a relatively short period of time. So, and
the making of Terangrial and Quendiar.
Right. And then the magic sort of golden age again, that we can remake Angrial, Terangrial, Saw-Angrial, right? Like all of those things are possible again. Combined with the return of talents and, we're actually recruiting everybody who can channel again. They're not all hiding in these little pockets, so we can have, a university system instead of just one school.
Yeah, literally.
No, it's going to be a whole golden age. Which is why I don't believe in Aviendha's vision is ever going to be real. right? Everyone's like, oh, no, that's how the fourth age turns out. I'm like, no. The whole point of the columns is to prevent that from happening.
It was a necessary goad to get her to make some changes to prevent anything like that from happening.
But I imagine that's what being a wise one will be in the future is like, oh, here's a possible future, a bad future we want you to avoid.
Yeah, here's the big generational problem that you need to solve, and here's some ways that you could make it worse. So don't do that.
Yeah. Here's your grad student project.
Basically. For the rest of your life. Yeah, I'm curious if the columns are going to continue to take such a direct role in shaping destiny after the end of the Third Age, or if they're going to be more like, here's a cool idea for a play. Here's some cool audio visual technology you could figure out. Like, here's how to fly. Maybe you should take up rocketry, I
mean, but it talks about generational problems, right? So like the idea that there won't be generational problems is, yeah.
Well, that's just what I'm curious is is the glass columns going to stay focused on generational problems once the Fourth Age starts? And it's like will the foot be taken off of the gas on that? Because it feels like a little OP to be like, oh, no, we just have an oracle that tells us what to do for problems that are 30 years on the horizon.
But that is exactly what the accepted test is, right? That they take. They go in, they see all these different visions of not accepted.
The apprentice. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, the wise one apprentice test, right? You go in and you see all these. That's the whole thing. I mean, we just talked about the season trailer, how they talked about Moraine is going to die at the end of it, so Rand can live. And the whole point of that, the whole reason she saw that is she took the wise one's apprentice test, went through the three rings, saw all of her potential futures where the possibilities were endless, but she only retained some of them. And one of the possibilities she retained is these three outcomes of either Lanfear, either Rand dies, Lanfear takes him away and he becomes Lewis Theron, or she takes out Lanfear through the doorway, right? And those are the only three possibilities. And that's all about the Wise One's test. So having hints to the future.
So I question why you need the columns in addition to the rings. It seems OP. You've already got the rings. You don't need the columns. After evil is literally sealed away, the stakes are lower, right? We get to go on our own free will way and just figure it out. We don't need.
I mean, well, but then you can tell stories about people's lives and people's, I don't know. That's
fun speculation. That's
fun speculation. What will the columns tell you about when the fate of the world isn't quite in jeopardy all the time?
Exactly. What could they care about next? Is it going to be finding water? Really? That seems, I don't know. What will the big crisis be? I want the next series, damn it. Maybe they could be deeply involved in the ending of chattel magic slavery. That would be a pretty important generational problem to solve. The Shan aren't just going to fix themselves overnight, unfortunately.
No, I mean, slavery is a super easy problem to solve. You can, solve it in a generation, maybe two at the most.
Yeah. Totally.
No.
I love how Aviendha says she would find honor in her new life somehow. And I'm thinking, eventually, so far from now. It's nice that you say it's going to happen, but it's going to be so long.
Mm-hmm.
I was worried she was going to roll up to the last battle, still unsure of her power,
Interesting that the ghosts leave her with a bit of an itch, as though she were about to be attacked. Little sensing of the pattern, some talent that Aviendha has that helps her identify Terran Real, helps her identify dead people.
Either that or it's the general Dark One thing that gives all channelers the itch, because this is an effect of the Dark One, even though they are not themselves dark ghosts.
Sure.
But yeah, I definitely she's oh, it's silly for Ruark, or for not Ruark, but it's silly for the Aiel to question it. And it's Aviendha, they can't all channel. You have a very rare talent with the whole channeling thing. Everyone else has to rely on their normal senses.
Yeah, and Ruark you can't always tell if people are ghosts from a distance.
Exactly. Ruark's not a channeler, and Aviendha should know that. But alas.
There are signs, outdated clothes, them ignoring, walking through trees, that sort of thing. But
that's true. Not casting shadows.
Right. So, but you've got to, be observant, which Ruark is. So, but if it's a normal group of people, then you get in that point where you got to question yourself, wait, are they? I don't see any signs, but I don't trust.
Mm-hmm.
I can see that sort of level of paranoia.
So yeah, she thinks a bit about how she wants to marry Rand, but only after she has her honor back, and she can't get her honor back until she figures out how she sinned in the eyes of the wise ones, and she just runs around that circle a couple of times.
And he's an idiot for asking me to marry him. I'm clearly going to have to ask him. It's not that I think he's cruel. It's just he's dumb. He's dumb, dumb, dumb. So dumb. Dummy, dummy, dummy. Yeah.
Yes, he's very ignorant for not intuitively knowing your culture. But you're perfectly
you were supposed
fine
to teach him.
to not understand his culture. That's totally fine for you to not understand him. But he needs to understand you. Okay.
Well, and what I love is, like, if we went back and looked at what she never taught him about relationship stuff, because she was scared of that.
Why?
Right? So she taught him everything else except the relationship stuff, and then blames him because he doesn't know the relationship stuff.
Like, look, none of the boys are good with women, but girl, you are not doing yourself any favors. You're not helping him here.
Mm-hmm.
But she's determined she's going to marry him. So it's like, you'd better figure out how to communicate with your husband because, come on.
So then there's the meetup between the group, sort of they all come together and start talking. That's the next chunk I have.
Like where they're discussing about becoming cops.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've kind of talked about all of that.
Right. Restoring order. We see Ruark's little thing about restoring order. And this is, his intentions were not clear. He asked us to restore order. Are we to be like city guardians? And like, he doesn't, even their place in the post Last Battle world, they're not city cops. They come in for political disputes as big armies, right?
Yeah, which is a super profound difference that I'm sure will make everyone happy.
But yeah, we kind of talked about all that.
We get a kind of a timestamp here with Melane's pregnancy, that it's just starting to show beneath her Wise One's blouse. I believe by the time we get into the last battle, she is starting to get like movement impaired from how close she is to popping. I'm pretty sure there's a scene where she is like basically waddling around, being like very pregnant. Like not as pregnant as Elaine, but like getting there, I'm pretty sure. So the fact, like I remember her being very pregnant near the end. And so to have her be like, oh, her pregnancy's just showing here. I'm like, wow, we actually do cover a lot of time in these last 3 books.
There's 3 to 6 months left in these books. Like the timeline gets really muddy, especially right when we get the timeline dilation and Rand's like up there for a day. And like if you go out to the border, the Southlands, it's been like 6 months.
Right.
Like in that single day, like he really stretches out that timeline. But yeah, you can look at like anywhere, depending on where you are relative to the last battle, 3 to 6 months basically pass between now and the end of the series.
So yeah, here's just a pregnancy clock to help us keep track of that. So yeah, then we have Bear interviewing Aviendha in ways that should invite Aviendha to claim her power, but alas, do not, because Aviendha is too focused.
I love this. Aviendha, how many wise ones went with Ruark to scout this refugee? None but me, Aviendha admitted. Oh, are you a wise one now?
Rolling out the red carpet.
Are you? Say yes.
Rolls,
say yes.
Trumpets.
Say yes.
Confetti,
that's all you have to do is say
ticker
yes.
tape. It's all there. And Aviendha's just like, I don't think I'm qualified.
No, not me. No, sorry. Imposter syndrome.
And then like on the next page, they're talking about Randall Thor, and Aviendha says, I love him. And Bear literally says, I was talking to Aviendha the wise one, not Aviendha the silly girl.
Yeah, she doesn't even say wise one's apprentice, the wise one.
She literally calls you a wise one, Aviendha.
Jesus
Please
Christ,
get
Aviendha.
the memo.
Oh
please.
my God, banging my head against the wall. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I love her. She's so driven that she's missing the point entirely. It's just beautiful. I totally empathize. She has a little clarification about how she wants to marry Rand, but it's not prophesied. Just the fact that he will love her and the other 2 women is prophesied, which seems like a meaningless piece of nuance, but it merits a page and a half. So there you go.
And I think here's a paragraph to show why we're doing a doubleheader today. He is a man of many burdens, Aviendha said more carefully. I fear that he makes many of those burdens heavier than they need to be. I once thought there was only one way to be strong. I have learned from my first sister that I was wrong. Rand al'Thor, I do not think he has learned this yet. I worry he mistakes hardness for strength.
Absolutely.
Right, so that is the theme of these 2 chapters, is mistaking hardness for strength, which is in a lot of ways the theme of Rand, right? And
Big time. Yeah.
Clearly, that is not being pulled out of nowhere, right? Rand has been talking about getting harder, becoming stone, becoming metal, becoming, and now it becomes Quendiar. But
Right. Catspain and Soralia talk about it's important. Like,
Right.
It's we see it, I think, with some of like the war wisdom from the other old generals about like the difference between old men and young men. Like, yeah, it's a big central thesis that Robert Jordan has been laying out for a long time. And Brandon Sanderson is just saying, yes, I understand that message and I will be continuing it with our characters. We are not missing that message. He might not have the personal lived experience, but he does know how to read a well-delivered message and keep it going.
Something I do think Brandon Sanderson missed, though, when they ask Aviendha, how do you know that you will marry him? Right? And she goes, oh, men's viewings. That's not, no. No. That is a huge mistake.
Yeah.
Because she did not learn about marrying Rand from men's visions.
Nope. She got that from the rings.
She learned about it from the rings, from going through Apprentice. She went out to the rings after promising Elaine she would watch over Rand and make sure nobody fell in love with him and nobody else pursued him, went through the rings and found out that in her future, it was inevitable that she would be with him and fall in love with him.
Yeah. Yeah. The men's viewings added to that.
Uh-huh. But that's why she came back pissed off at him, angry at him, is because all of a sudden she realized that she was going to be violating her G, because she promised Egwene she would look after him for Elaine, which is just very convoluted. But she would, basically the prophecy said, oh no, you're prophesized to break that.
Well, I think also the rings told her she would love Rand and all that. Min's viewing added context and detail about the fact that there were two other women. Because part of the question is coming up in the context of, so you're going to figure out how to have two sister wives. You're going to figure this out with Min. And Aviendha says, we're going to figure it out. And it sort of goes back and forth. And she's like, look, I know we're going to figure it out because the viewing said he's going to love three women. Like from the rings, I don't think she got the three women from the rings. I think she just got her part of it from the rings. Min brings in the, like, you can't escape the two sister wives factor. So, but yeah, it would be nice if the rings had been brought up in this.
Right.
Because that is a very important piece of missing context in what is here on the page. Yeah.
Because, the whole relationship between Aviendha and Rand, the whole, first two books of it, right? Which is most of their relationship where they're together, right? Is book 4, book 5, right? Is all based, her entire thing is I went through those rings and now I'm pissed.
Yep. And it's very frustrating to have that get completely omitted here. Min's viewings are relevant to understanding her acceptance of Min, but it's not relevant to her acceptance of her love of Rand.
And then there's another line here that's just a classic example of Sanderson just saying things straight out, where he says honor didn't come from being punished. Again, he didn't say G, he says honor, which Aviendha never would, so that's a mistake. Honor didn't come from being punished, but accepting a punishment and bearing it restored honor. That
was the soul of To, the willing lowering of oneself in order to recover that which has been lost. He got the second half of the sentence. But yeah.
But he is translating for us. He is saying this is what G is, this is what To is. Let me explain to you in terms of honor.
Yeah, which it feels less anachronistic than when he uses the word carbon a couple pages back. He talks about the carbon that strengthens the points of her spirits, which they are a post-technological utopia society, so they could have things like retaining the knowledge of how metallurgy works for things like steel. Absolutely valid. They understand the concept of infection, right? Because again, their medical technology has descended from a place of knowledge, but it feels anachronistic. It feels a little out of place, just a tiny bit. So yeah, when he says honor instead of G, it's like Robert Jordan would never have held our hands like that.
No, never.
Aviendha would never translate the word into honor. Never, ever, ever. I mean, occasionally in some sentences, but not in this one.
She'd be like, it's like that honor thing you guys talk about, and then she'd get it totally wrong.
Exactly. She would compare it to pride or something like that. Just
right,
completely we know what you mean, but you're wrong. But no, it is a good Sanderson insight into this is the point. This is what Egwene was talking about last chapter. And, it's correct. It's just not as much an obvious voice as we could wish.
And then here's more evidence that a bunch more evidence that Aviendha isn't actually learning anything, because she's like, oh, I'm sorry I'm not as strong as I was because I fell to the Wetlanders' ways. And I mean, it's like, you're as strong as you've ever been. You're stronger, actually. And then she's like, and they want me to learn, but they're not teaching me anything. They're just punishing me. I have no lessons. I'm as strong as I've ever been. I don't understand. You're like, okay.
Yeah,
There is a certain having on a reread. Maybe on the first time I didn't quite get it as quickly because I was like, I don't get why she's being punished. Like it wasn't something that I understood on the first read through. Maybe I missed it, but certainly on a reread, it's like, okay, I understand now.
I feel like I picked up on it about halfway through the arc. Like the first few chapters, I was confused, and then once the repetition got a little much, I was like, I don't see any other explanation for why this is happening other than what ultimately was the correct answer. And I was like, damn, I called that way too many chapters ago. This needed to wrap the fuck up.
I think when it finally dropped, I did more of the, oh, that's it? Okay.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I didn't guess that because I thought it would be something a little more significant.
It's really obvious, right?
Yeah,
like it
is really obvious.
He lays out the thing here like so much. It's like the punishment was the thing the wise ones wanted her to learn. Like it's too obvious. Robert Jordan would never be so obvious.
No, and they start giving her that song work, right? They're giving
right
her
here,
useless work instead of useful work for the first time. And it's like, Jesus, that is like the biggest. I mean, you're essentially treating her like a dat song. That is the worst punishment we can think of.
And like wasting her time and energy, right? Like she could be doing things and instead you want her to be pretending to count thousands of red seeds.
During the last battle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like it's so dishonorable. I'm almost mad at the wise ones for not just telling her that she's graduated already. Like I get their reasoning, but like it gets so absurd. It makes me want to, scold Brandon Sanderson. Hence having a podcast where we can scold him and he will probably never hear it.
And I do like the fact that like she never ever comes to this conclusion on her own. The wise ones can't do it. It takes Min. Like that is pretty funny, right? Like that I think is actually like a well played version of it. It's just when the setup for the joke is just way too long and you're just like, wait,
exactly.
Yeah.
But it is awesome that Min, in her attempt to talk to Aviendha and like make friends with her, is what like. Because she's new, right? She's been doing all the old strategies and that's not working. And when Min interjects something new, that's enough for her to like snap and shift into a new way of being. And it means that her and Min have the basis for a good friendship later. Like she even thinks on her trip to the waste, like, oh, I'm really going to have to like seriously talk to Min and thank her for being the catalyst to this.
Which is, I mean, this is a big part of what we're doing here is filling a hole that Jordan has left, which is the relationship between Aviendha and Min has to be repaired in a way so that they can be sister wives to Rand and not murder each other. Right. Like that is a hole that Jordan did not touch, right? He built a relationship between Min and Elaine. He built a great relationship, a nice relationship between Elaine and Aviendha. But he built nothing between Min and Aviendha.
Yeah.
Who has two very straightforward warrior knife-wielding women who don't take bullshit, right? Like, you'd think they get along just fine, but they struggle.
They're too similar.
Yeah. The strong personalities conflict in an interesting way.
Yeah. Plus, Aviendha's been in a very insecure place for a lot of their relationship. So when she does come back as a wise one to Min and say, hey, I want to revisit that conversation, she's going to be operating from a much more grounded place. And I think they'll discover that they do like each other quite a bit. It's one of those like nice pieces of the Outrigger series that would have just been nice to just be like their ultimate coming to a very good understanding would have been a very nice arc to read. Oh yeah,
give me more of all of this, right? Like I am not happy that there's no sequel to The Wheel of Time, right?
Yeah.
I would love to read more about all of these characters, even if it's just through cameos and references and like, oh yeah, King Lan, he ruled in peace for, 50 years before he, retired, and his wife is now basically Codswain, who travels around,
Codswain, but with a cooler name.
Being badass, right?
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Even if it's just lines like that, I would love stuff like that. But it is what it is. Yeah.
And all I've got left is the readout.
The readout, yeah.
All right. Well, I will do that then. Amis moved off to run with the other wise ones. Aviendha shook off her stupor, her determination returning. Her mistake must have been more profound than she had thought. Amis's punishment was an indication of that. She opened the bag and glanced inside. There were 3 little empty algode bags inside to help with the separation, and thousands of tiny seeds nearly engulfed them. This punishment was meant to be seen, meant to bring her shame. Whatever she'd done, it was offensive not just to the wise ones, but to all around her. Even if they, like Aviendha herself, were ignorant of it. That only meant she had to be more determined. Trees,
and the determination
forest.
is counterproductive. Yeah.
I'm
really going to bug her down and do all these punishments as hard as I can. No, that's not. No,
it's not the
stop,
assignment.
Stop. She really needs to read all the instructions that say don't do this test. Just write a smiley face on the top.
Yeah, she's definitely
Yeah. Read all questions first, and the last question is don't do any of the previous questions, and you'll get 100.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's absolutely failing that test.
She's totally failing that test. She's writing every answer down in order as she goes through, and then she gets to the bottom, and someone goes, "Hey, you just had to say you were a wise one, and we would have let you stop taking the test at any time."
Truly. It's a good lesson for us all to take in our lives, you know? Sometimes you should just assume the authority because no one is actually going to give it to you. You do have to take it.
Combined with the saying better to ask forgiveness than permission sometimes, right? And that's where you take the authority, and like if you shouldn't have, you will have to ask for forgiveness.
Yeah, and like you don't take just any authority on a whim. You think about it, you assess your learning, you understand where you exist in space and relation to other people, and then you make a reasoned choice. But you stand on that because it's reasoned. You don't have to wait for permission.
Best choice with the information you have available at the time.
Yeah, like at the end of the day, you are your own best authority. Like, particularly in this world, we don't cede authority to people unless they take it. Like
seed authority, get it? The seeds that she's counting. Seed authority.
Didn't mean that, but okay, there we go. We're gonna just end this episode on that fantastic accidental pun.
Oh, you're punny and you don't even know it. That's great. All right. Well, thanks for joining us. See you guys next time. Really appreciate everybody who's joining us for this journey on these Sanderson books. New Spring, we definitely plan on doing New Spring, but not till after these books. We've agreed that that's kind of how you restart the wheel, right? Like you get to the end of these books, then you go, oh, you know, I want to read the prequel. And then you get the prequel and you're like, oh, you want to read after that? The Eye of the World, right? In order. So there was a couple of other times when we could have done New Spring, like after book 5, but I was not organized enough at that point to consider it. And then again, I think after book 11, and we discussed doing it after book 11, but I think that's when me and Aradia sat down and we're like, you know what, it's better off if we just put it at the end. That's when we both read it, is we read it after Memory of Light, and to us, that's just a really good way to put the turning of the wheel and have it turn over again and restart the timeline. And Aradia got up and left me, so now I don't know what to do. She's like, let's dig into this book, but I'm leaving. So it's just on you, even though she's got the read-in. The Nature of Pain. I guess I could read this in while I wait. I did not get the radon testing done because I have a garage that is ground level. It's like a foot underground, and it's got a garage door and a back door, and I'm not really worried about radon levels building up in that space. It's got plenty of ventilation. There's nothing underground. Yeah, no basement. No basement. Just a garage. So yeah, I can tell you a little bit about my house while we wait. My garage is on the first floor, so it's definitely one of those first floor garage. Goes the length of the house, so it's like long enough for 2 cars. And then there's like a mud room with stairs leading up. First floor is a decent sized kitchen with a little island, living room with a gas fireplace, and sort of dining room area. It's kind of one long shotgun area. It's a long, narrowish house. And then stairs leading up to the second. And then there's a little half bath off the kitchen. And then stairs go up to the second floor, which is 2 bedrooms. And each bedroom has its own bathroom with washer and dryer in between the 2 bedrooms, which I'm very excited about. Because right now I just got back from the laundromat. That's why I was almost late to this recording, because it's the freaking laundromat. So I'm so excited to not have to go to the laundromat anymore. Oh my God, I cannot freaking wait to do my own laundry. Gas stove. And one of the things I am worried about is the gas stove does not have ventilation over it. There is no hood. So I will have to open a window and or install ventilation, which doesn't look that difficult. The stove is right next to the wall, so I'd have to go through one cabinet to the wall.
That's not so
to
bad.
The outside. So
That's not so bad.
I'm pretty sure it's only 100 amp. I don't think it's not that big of a house.
Not having a hood sucks. Like, having a hood is really critical.
Yeah, I'm not excited about not having a hood, especially with a gas fireplace or gas stove. I mean,
yeah, for sure. Just for regular cooking, but especially with gas. Yeah, I'm a big fan of not having gas, even though I know it's better for cooking in some respects. I'm just such a big fan of not having gas in my house. Like,
we're just gonna have to. There's a big window over the kitchen sink, so that'll just have to be open whenever we're cooking. So
there's systems you can apply to make that connection between stove and window a little more tubular.
Yeah, I think right now there's a built-in microwave above the oven as well, which
I hate that.
Yeah, so
that's what ours is, and it's like that's our next kitchen remodel upgrade. Is like we need a real hood that does not involve a microwave taking up most of the space. Like we technically have a hood, but it sucks, and a microwave is why.
So I can see that being an upgrade is taking out that microwave, replacing it with a hood.
Yeah.
And just having a microwave on the counter, because I barely use a microwave.
Right? We use it to heat up water.
Yeah.
And to heat up drinks. Mm-hmm. And to soften butter. Reheating food occasionally.
And I got to tell you, the best thing about my current rental is that I have an induction stove. Because induction...
Is that good?
Oh my God, it's amazing.
How is it with cast iron?
Amazing. Cast iron is... if it's magnetic...
Well, how is the stove with cast iron? Like, is the stove surface, like, harmed?
I've been using it for years, and there's no problem.
That's been what we've been worried about. Is like, would we have to switch stove?
Normal glass stoves. Here's my issue. Normal glass stoves, you are heating up the glass. The glass gets red hot, and that's what heats up the pan. So shit burns on there, and the glass is so hot, I think it scratches easy, right? With the induction, you're not heating up the glass. You're heating up the pan directly. You're skipping the glass, which means the glass only usually gets up to the boiling point of water, because usually you're not really cooking anything much hotter than water, right? And so the glass only gets up to 200 degrees, not red hot. And so the glass is so much stronger and less likely to scratch with the induction stove. And, cool. Don't
Our
slam it
concern
down.
was just... Yeah. We were just worried that we'd have to give up our cast iron, and that was like, that's a non-negotiable. We're not doing that.
And by the way, yes, I do have an electric kettle to boil water. However, I also have a stove kettle on the induction stove because it is so goddamn fast compared to any other method, because I can put all 220 volts of power from my induction stove into the kettle. It doesn't go into a pan. It doesn't go into the glass surface. It literally heats up the metal surface of the kettle, which the water sucks up, because it's got 100% contact surface. I can boil, a couple of cups of water in, 90 seconds. I mean, it's crazy how fast it is.
Wow.
You turn it on and you see the bubbles almost instantly. Like, it is so much better and it's better than gas. It's way better than any kind of electric stove I've ever used. Now, I will say the controls on my stove suck. They're they're terrible. The controls are awful. Terrible, hate them, no good, very bad controls. The induction aspect of it is amazing.
Okay, Lilligin, no, we're not microwaving water to drink. My husband microwaves water for baking because he needs to bring it up to a very specific temperature. So he will microwave water for baking. We're not talking about microwaving water to boil tea. We have an electric kettle. We are reasonable people.
I would still use boil water and then add cold water to get it to temp, I think.
Well, that's you.
Yeah.
I am not the baker of the household.
My mother made her water in the microwave for tea my whole life. That's what I was used to. You know, I think one of the reasons why Americans don't have electric kettles and the British do is that we do have a different voltage system, and it does take quite a bit longer for us to boil water in our kettles.
We've had our electric kettles so long that the plastic casing on the top is starting to crack and leak. And like the lid broke off the other day. Like the part where the lid swings up, like it broke. We've had it so long.
Time to replace it.
Yeah. But this is good to know because literally our stove and hood and microwave whole situation, like that's what we're upgrading next. Like first we upgraded our refrigerator and then we did the dishwasher. Next up is the cooking appliance. So this is good to hear that induction works well with cast iron.
If I ever have a choice between induction gas or any sort of electric, I will pull the cord on induction, even if it costs twice as much. Like, I can't tell you what a difference it makes for cleaning stuff up because you get nothing burns on anywhere, for speed, for...
That does appeal to me a lot. The fucking burnt on shit is fucking
burnt on
annoying.
shit. No burn. And also then just all the studies coming about how gas really does produce nasty hydrocarbons, unburned shit into your house that you need to vent. Like, it is a problem, and we are not dealing with it and not talking about it the way we should be. Yeah, I guess if you have a pacemaker, induction's a bad idea.
Oh, I wonder if that would be bad for my health monitor thingy. Insurance. This is a good recommendation.
Yeah.
Because
So that's all. And then I will say that, like I said, my coworker was looking at buying a stove. I recommended the induction, but I said, make sure you get the ones with physical dials. And he said, especially because his wife has some mobility issues. So
okay. Yeah. Interfaces are hard.
Interfaces. So he said that one works great. So he was looking between the two models, the one that was touchscreen and the one that was physical dials. Get the one with physical dials.
Okay. Yeah. We have like little buttons that like go up in like just some arbitrary number system, and it's very like non-linear and stupid. And like we would love I was just ranting to Brandon the other day about how I would love a just simple fucking rheostat. It doesn't need to be this whole complicated song and dance of turning off and turning on, and just give me a fucking resistor.
Right.
I will control it. I'm a fucking human. I'm smart.
Yes. No, and I was saying the house I'm moving into, one of the downsides, I'm buying in at the lower tier, right? So the house is, of course, going to have some downsides. And one of the downsides is the water heater, the furnace, and the air conditioner are all, basically 20 years old. And will probably need replacing relatively soon. So I have to save money for that because they're going to die on me. But that does give me a chance to do things like install a heat pump water heater.
Nice.
Because if I have to replace the air conditioner, the difference between an air conditioner that's also a heat pump, so it can heat your place up as well as cool it down, is really, really small. And because of where we live in the Pacific Northwest, we don't live in a place where it really gets that cold. And so a heat pump can really be effective. And I have, it's like a gas furnace. And why not, like, if I do have to replace the AC and the furnace, why not replace it with one thing that can do both? Right. Yeah. And that's where I come from, hey, if you're not angry, you're not paying attention, right? Like, there's so much going on in the world that's just unjust. And we just got done with our talk about climate change and how screwed we are.
Well, that's different kind of anger.
Right.
I was thinking more of the just like you disagreed with me, so now I'm going to be loud and break things sort of anger.
But to me, those come from the same place because yes. Because I come from a place of saying, I've done the research on this. I believe I am right. And I know you're wrong. And there's an anger for me that associates with people who were like, I know you're wrong. And the fact that you're not seeing this makes me very angry. Even if, right, so I just don't believe that people are being I just literally in my soul cannot believe people are genuinely seeing things accurately and arguing the opposite way I am. And it makes me mad as hell. But I understand
that's not toxic. That's not toxic at all.
No,
that's not hardness.
Not at all. But my reaction to it, which was to get in their face and yell at them and point a finger and tell them that they're wrong, was toxic, right?
Okay.
Right? Okay. So, like, there's a difference in your reaction versus the feeling. So that's the difference I was trying to get to.
It's not the emotion. It's the outward expression of it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know that I think that the Andrew Tates of the world are operating from the same well of anger. I think they're just assholes. I don't think that their anger is nearly as well founded as like being angry that people are in denial of basic facts, like the fact that the climate is fucked.
No, it's probably more to do with their angry that they don't get things that they want, right? That society doesn't operate in a way that they think that it should, that women aren't obligated to interact with them in ways that they think they should, right? There's a certain level of I am entitled to this and therefore I have anger about it. I think that's where they're operating from.
You think that's the same anger as...
No. Well, I mean, it's anger's anger, right? Like,
no, I don't think so. I think there's at least two kinds.
Righteous anger and envious anger.
Yeah, righteous anger and being a shitty little pissant who can't stand to have other people exist. I don't think that comes from the same place as righteous anger. I refuse to share the righteous anger well with these shitheads. Like, no, they can go get their anger from a different, shallower, more arsenic-contaminated well.
They feel the same to me because I've experienced both. You know, I've definitely had both the... I mean, I'm a white man, right? Like, there was a point in my life...
I've never felt entitled to someone else's existence.
I would be lying if I say I hadn't, right? Like, I was raised in a certain way by certain people in a certain place, and I've gotten better, but I can't say I've always been, not felt entitled. Like, I certainly have at various points in my life. And I don't, but I've also then come around to the other side and felt righteous anger. And they feel the same. And it's crazy to me they feel the same. They shouldn't.
Huh.
They shouldn't.
They shouldn't.
But you think you're being wronged in both situations. And the anger comes from what you feel like the world is wronging you, either because people are doing things that are wrong or you are being wronged as a person who is not getting what you deserve.
Wow. Well, that's an upsetting piece of information I am trying to ingest. Thank you for sharing, but ugh.
It helps me understand a certain level of anger and a certain level of reaction in people and gives me some, I'm not going to say sympathy because I'm not sympathetic to that reaction.
Empathy.
But empathy, yeah, it makes me go, oh, okay, yeah, I understand that you're feeling that way and that it feels real, but I need you to understand that it's not something you deserve and that you need to control your anger around that.
I guess it's just also like, what a privileged fucking bubble you must live in if that's the worst thing that's ever happened to you. If that's the most anger-making thing you've ever experienced. Like, you've never experienced a really difficult, angry-making thing? Like,
No, I mean, but you can't say that just because they feel angry about that doesn't mean they haven't experienced other actual injustices. People just can't tell the difference. Our brains are fucked up. Aradia,
I feel like I'm a person who understands. I'm so angry all the time. I've been angry my whole life. My reputation as a little kid was the angry one. Like, how is this a whole aspect of anger that I've never even stumbled across? Because it's the same thing. The Lil Jin's pointing out, and we should cut most of this, by the way, or at least put it in the end of the episode. But Lil Jin's pointing out that the feeling of being wronged as a neurodivergent person, like, I'm not being treated fairly, right? Yeah,
because I'm neurodivergent. What you view as fairness influences that emotion a lot. And neurotypical people see fairness one way, neurodivergent people see it another way, and narcissists see it in an entirely third way, right? And they think what they deserve is way above and beyond anything you think you would deserve and what you would think is fair.
I don't like any of this. Let's get back to things worth recording.
Oh, yeah. You don't want to go on a nice long examination of male anger yeah.
This has been long enough. This is upsetting. I'm sorry to all the men out there. This is a terrible, awful burden you're carrying around. It's a fucking nothing burger that's giving you all heart attacks.
How dare the world not conform to my desires? It's really unfortunate.
I'm just like, I can't take people seriously whose biggest reason for being angry is that I don't see myself as their property. Like, I'm sorry, I'm gonna laugh at you.
Yeah.
Like, no, my anger over like murders of black and brown people in the street with no fucking consequences is not fucking comparable. It's just not. Like, get the fuck out. But I mean, you know, it's the difference. It's the false assumption that there is a difference between big T and little t trauma, right? Like, there isn't. You have the experiences you have, and they are as the most intense experiences you've ever had, regardless of how they stack up to other people's. They're what happened to you.
It's why you can't compare pain levels either among people, right?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm hurting at a 7. What are you hurting at? Well, mine's a 9. I'm clearly hurting more than you, right? Like that sort of thing just doesn't work because people have chronic pain. People have, different reactions to different pains in different parts of their body. Surgery can feel different than an implant, which can feel different than fucking bone disease, right? Like, I don't know. Pain is so unique and different from person to person.
Yeah. So psychological pain is exactly as complicated and confusing and individualized as physical pain.
If not more so.
Well, that was all very good to get out, but it will be cut. Or put at the end. I don't know.
Yeah. Cut down significantly and then maybe put at the end.
It might be. Sometimes it's good for people to hear this shit get aired, but it is not relevant to the book.
No,
at all.
It's not necessary.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Please rate and review us on your podcast app and consider supporting us on Patreon for ad-free episodes. What Spoilers is a production of Fox and Raven Media. For more podcasts from Fox and Raven Media, visit our website at foxandravenmedia.com.